say you wanna watch a drama. You say you wanna watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama, or you can watch it with your daddy.
You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler, so you can come and talk around a water cooler. We're watching all day and all night.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa. Couch potatoes unite.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name because it's obviously our continuing mission, okay? My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the blog or the podcast via Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, via Google Play, and now on Spotify to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including but not limited to Fuller House, Westworld, The Good Place, Grace and Frankie, Arrested Development, Jane the Virgin, Schitt's Creek, and the Arrowverse on the CW. We've published several episodes in our Looking Back series covering such diverse shows as The Americans, Reign, Friends, Sense8, and Battle Creek. Plus, new episodes are in the works, including revisits for Gotham, Game of Thrones, Stranger Things, iZombie, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., 13 Reasons Why, The Crown, American Horror Story. We'll be launching new panels covering Riverdale, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Altered Carbon, Mr. Robot, Charmed, Outlander, The Breaking Bad Universe, and This Is Us. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll take a smallish look back at a short-term show from some kind of yesteryear called Freaks and Geeks. We'll put out some musical stops for our crazy ex-girlfriend. We'll revisit one of the all-time and most-watched classic sitcoms, MASH, and we'll consider the moral implications and quick cancellation of Dollhouse. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers and comedy shows and Comic-Cons, and we just went live from Blue Ridge Games to take a shiny look back at Firefly. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff. It's true. So make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to the blog, our YouTube channel, our iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Play as well as on Spotify. In the meantime, if you don't hear a show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews and we always seek new panelists. So if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of those outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback. Just don't get big for your britches like Wesley Crusher, or we may feel compelled to tell you to shut up. Today's panel and I are continuing a new Looking Back series, the biggest Looking Back series we've ever launched, by request of one of our panel members and our second most involved panelist by a hair, who made such an impassioned speech about this series of series at one of our live Comic-Con events. We were moved to embark upon this now continuing mission of galactic proportions. If you aren't already aware, from time to time, CPU will be choosing shows of all types, but usually of some fame or notoriety to reminisce about, and to consider whether or not they age gracefully like an android obsessed with the human condition, or don't hold up as well like an alien being obsessed with testing the human condition. As such, this is another chapter of our Looking Back podcast episodes, wherein we review a show that has been gone, either via natural end or cancellation for some time, and this is but one chapter in a 30-episode or more series in which we will explore each individual season of a science fiction universe that comes back without never completely going away in cycles that have recurred for more than 50 years. Today we offer you episode 5 of this mega series, which will cover the entire Star Trek franchise. In today's 5th episode, we'll be discussing the first season of The Next Generation. Each new episode in this new CPU podcast franchise will progress through subsequent seasons of all of the Star Trek TV series with additional coverage of the films. Furthermore, our panel will be rotating moderation duties. However, your friendly neighborhood Chief Couch Potato and Captain of the Starship CPU is not ready to give away the helm just yet. I am moderating today's discussion and the entire run of The Next Generation because this is my favorite chapter and Chief Couch Potato privilege. Also, at various points in this mega series, we'll present top 10 best and bottom 10 worst episode lists around various themes chosen by the moderator in question, as we tend to do with our retrospective series. But we can't get started without a tiny bit of plot summary, though, so here goes The Next Generation. Star Trek The Next Generation is an American science fiction television series created by Gene Roddenberry. It originally aired from September 28, 1987 to May 23, 1994 in syndication, spanning 178 episodes over the course of 7 seasons. The third series in the Star Trek franchise, it is the second sequel to Star Trek the original series. Set in the 24th century when Earth is part of the United Federation of Planets, it follows the adventures of a Starfleet starship, the USS Enterprise D, and its exploration of the Milky Way galaxy. In the 1980s, Roddenberry, who had been responsible for the original Star Trek the Animated Series, and a series of films, had been tasked by Paramount to create a new series in the franchise. He decided to set it a century after the events of his original series. The Next Generation featured a new crew starring Patrick Stewart as Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Jonathan Frakes as Commander William Riker, Brent Spiner as Lieutenant Commander Data, Michael Dorn as Lieutenant J.G., later Lieutenant Worf, LeVar Burton as Lieutenant J.G., later then Lieutenant Commander Geordi LaForge, Marina Sirtis as Counselor Deanna Troi, Gates McFadden as Dr. Beverly Crusher, and a new Enterprise. Roddenberry, Maurice Hurley, Rick Berman, Michael Piller, and Jerry Taylor served as executive producers at various times throughout its production. The series was broadcast in first-run syndication, with dates and times varying among individual television stations. The show was very popular, reaching almost 12 million viewers in its 5th season, with the series finale in 1994 being watched by over 30 million viewers. Following the show's success, Paramount commissioned Rick Berman and Michael Piller to create a 4th series in the franchise, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which launched in 1993. The characters from The Next Generation returned in the 4 films Star Trek Generations, Star Trek First Contact, Star Trek Insurrection, and Star Trek Nemesis, and for the television series Star Trek Picard. The series is also the setting of numerous novels, comic books, and video games. The series received a number of accolades, including 19 Emmy Awards, 2 Hugo Awards, 5 Saturn Awards, and a Peabody Award. The Next Generation average of 20 million viewers often exceeded both existing syndication successes such as Wheel of Fortune and network hits including Cheers and LA Law. Benefiting in part from many stations' decision to air each new episode twice in a week, it consistently ranked in the top 10 among hour-long dramas, and networks could not prevent affiliates from preempting their shows with The Next Generation or other dramas that imitated its syndication strategy. Star Trek The Next Generation, in its 7th season, became the first and only syndicated television show to be nominated for the Emmy for Best Dramatic Series. It was nominated for 3 Hugo Awards and won 2. The first season episode, The Big Goodbye, also won the Peabody Award for Excellence in Television Programming. Furthermore, Star Trek The Next Generation features on many best of lists followed by CPU and some that aren't. In 1997, the episode The Best of Both Worlds Part 1 was ranked number 70 on TV Guide's 100 Greatest Episodes of All Time. In 2002, Star Trek The Next Generation was ranked number 46 on TV Guide's 50 Greatest TV Shows of All Time list, and in 2008 was ranked number 37 on Empire's list of the 50 Greatest Television Shows. In 2012, Entertainment Weekly listed the show at number 7 in the 25 best cult TV shows from the past 25 years, and in 2017, Vulture ranked Star Trek The Next Generation the 2nd best live-action Star Trek television show. Today, in part 5 of our many multi-part Star Trek series, our modestly sized crew of Enterprise faithful and Trekkers extraordinaire, namely Nick, Sarah, Kyle, and Michael, along with your very involved moderator, will talk about the finer and less fine points of Season 1 of The Next Generation. It should be noted that all of our panelists have viewed the entire Next Gen series and may discuss sensitive plot points, so for those of you who have not watched Star Trek The Next Generation, first of all, we'd be happy to beam you aboard, and second, if you plan to do so, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. Welcome back, panel! How are you?
Awesome! Or engaged.
Are you ready to make it so by reintroducing yourselves and answering the standard CPU character question that changes with each show we do?
Always.
But
Resistance is futile. So on that note, what I'd like you to do is remind the listener who you are, your first name, only your first name, how you came to watch Star Trek, any of the series, what made you start watching, how did you find out about it, what kept you watching, did you watch all of The Next Generation, And then you get to rate your interest in the show at the beginning of the series and at the end, because this is a looking back episode. We're only going to do this one time over the 7 episodes we cover the Next Generation in. But here is the standard CPU character question that changes with each show we do for the Next Generation. Captain's Log, Stardate 41215.7. The Enterprise 1701D is the finest ship in the galaxy with the most exemplary crew and the best set of captains and commanders this side of science fiction, because they represent everything you are and everything you could ever hope to be, as you have the heart of an explorer and the soul of a poet. After all, quote, things are only impossible until they are not, end quote, as a certain captain would say, like Captain Jean-Luc Picard. You love Star Trek The Next Generation because it represented a bold new chapter in the Star Trek legacy, and you felt that you could learn so much from watching this series, particularly from the sequel's captain. Also, you adored the beautiful modern, romances in this sequel, like Commander First Officer William T. Riker. You find The Next Generation fascinating, a true marvel, and an intriguing exercise in the human condition. Though it leaves you processing sometimes, you find this series generally acceptable as a worthy entry in the Star Trek lexicon, like Lieutenant Commander Data. The Warp Core is overloading, Captain. There are parts, and particularly characters of this series, that you love so much, but you also think that The Next Generation might have occasionally been a bit too blind to progressive issues of the day. It started in the 80s after all, but you don't have to take my word for it. Like later Lieutenant Commander Geordi LaForge, it is a good day to die. What you like best about The Next Generation is the variety of enemy alien races that the Enterprise must grapple with, such as the Romulans, the Ferengi, the Cardassians, and the Borg, while navigating the intricacies of alliances with former enemies like the Klingons. You are reasonably impressed by the level of detail surrounding each new alien race and each new interaction, though the battles excite you most, even if the humans confuse you each episode, like later Lieutenant Commander Worf. Captain, I am sensing something. While on the one hand you acknowledge that the show was more progressive regarding women than its predecessor and forebear, the original series, on the other hand the female members of the crew are still, in some ways, overly sexualized in this series, though those tones lessen over the course of the series, and of course, in some cases that's part of the character's heritage, like Counselor Deanna Troi. Sickbay to Captain, medical emergency! At times you wish the show was funnier, or perhaps you wish your character was funnier, and you do take issue with some of the decisions made by the characters. All in all, though, you stayed the course and watched through to the end, probably because of your secret crush on Captain Picard, like Chief Medical Officer Dr. Beverly Crusher. You didn't enjoy The Next Generation all that much. Maybe you're an original series purist, or maybe you couldn't stand the fact that some bratty kid was all up in the Enterprise, saving it from trouble more than the adult characters did, or so it seemed. Still, you watched about half the series before you finally gave up. After all, the Borg were kind of cool, though you didn't appreciate being told to shut up by the captain, like Ensign Wesley Crusher, or you hate Star Trek or you stopped watching The Next Generation. You watched part of it, but just couldn't stand it. It's not what Star Trek is to you. You missed Kirk, Spock, and Bones, and you thought some of the stories were incredibly stupid, no matter how ironic such an opinion is to you. In any event, you decided to make other viewing plans, though you checked back on the show once in a while, only to find silly clone stories that made no sense in the timeline, which turned you off again, like Lieutenant Tasha Yar. Who would like to start?
Nick.
Hi, Nick!
I vaguely remember starting watching this show, random episodes as a kid, but I was, obsessed and wanted to watch more, but I was not getting them in the right order.
That was the hard part.
Yeah,
it was a struggle.
I had no idea when Yar died or who Pulaski was. It was insanity until I got the DVDs. And thus the obsession intensified.
Red alert!
This is probably, I know eventually down this multi-year project we're working on, I'll have to probably pick my favorite series, but I don't know what that is, but this one feels the most Star Trek to me. Obviously the original series is the original series, but this is what I go back to when I want that quintessential Star Trek feel. And then I tell you a character.
Yeah, how you felt at the beginning and how you felt at the end.
The beginning of my journey or the beginning of season 1?
The Next Generation.
Then it's Picard, because both.
Okay.
Since I didn't watch it originally from season 1 through the end, I loved it throughout. obviously season 1 is the worst and it improves.
Really?
I mean, that's most people's consensus.
Obviously,
talk about
my
it.
opinion is season 1 is overall the worst season, and then they continue to improve and are really close in nature at the last
All right.
4. I don't know how specific you want me to get.
Oh, I cannot wait.
Does that conclude your remarks?
I think so. I'm going to retreat to my ready room.
Okay.
I just want to point out that the entire time during the intro, he was looking at his phone, and the cover of his phone is a blue Star Trek uniform from the Next Generation.
With 3 pips.
With 3 pips.
So who does that mean?
Well, that would be the Doctor. Dr. Crusher.
I don't know. I look at it. There are 4 pips.
No, there are not. We'll talk about Nick's enduring love for Dr. Crusher, I'm sure, very shortly. Welcome back, Nick.
Thanks. May you all be less interrupted than I.
One can only hope.
The look on Sarah's face right now is very interesting.
I'll go. I'm the second love of his life. Being Dr. Beverly Crusher CMO, which was the name of his first car.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm Sarah.
She was
Hi,
blue.
Sarah.
I am married to Nick, and he is married to me. We got married.
That is the truth.
When I was younger, I would watch the show. It would be on. It was on. And I enjoyed it on the surface. I didn't seek it out, but if it was on, I was like, cool. I didn't know what was going on, but I still watched it. But then I met a boy named Nick. And this was a great thing in my life.
Well,
And
that's good.
we would take turns introducing series to each other and watching them to prove our love. You had to watch a series. Now, I don't know how it started. Was that
I
your
think we
idea?
just started with Quantum Leap.
Well, we happened to both be on the same season of Quantum Leap. We were both getting season 4 for Christmas, and that was a big coincidence. But,
That's how you knew it was meant to be.
I mean, yes.
You're
Who
MFEO.
Who else? He's my ride or die. That's what the kids say. I don't really know what it means. But. And then we started, this was not the first series that I watched. So we went really out of order, but I kind of agree with his statement. This one feels the most Star Trek-y, sort of, to me. So it's really hard to think about how I felt at the beginning of the series because I can't remember how I felt, if that makes any sense.
I mean, it's only been 33 years since it came out.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yikes. I was 2.
Yeah, me too. But, so I think I'm going to go with, I was William T. Riker at the beginning and William T. Riker at the end.
That sounds about right.
It sounds about right.
Way to go, number 1.
Yeah. I feel pretty comfortable in that number 1 spot. I enjoy that spot.
Even though in the new show, number 1's a dog.
I was going to say, you kind of have a resemblance to, like, number 1, too. Like, a physical resemblance.
Oh, that character.
Yeah.
It's
To
like,
Frakes?
no.
To the number 1 character of...
From the original series.
and
Majel.
That
Rebecca
Majel.
Romaine
Oh, well, yes, I do look a lot like Rebecca Romaine Stamos.
No,
Is that what you said?
Rebecca Romaine is what she goes by now. She's not married.
Yeah.
Anyway.
This is
Anyway.
going.
I don't know what's happening.
I don't know either, but
Welcome back,
if
Sarah.
somebody's going to tell you look like her, you're going to agree, right?
Sure, what? Well, okay.
And thanks, it's good. It's really good to be here. Live long and prosper.
I think the next talkative person should go next.
Oh, okay, that would
Kyle.
be me. So, I'm Michael.
Hi, Michael.
Hi. So, Star Trek The Next Generation. Let's go back to 1990-ish, 91. I
So
can
not
remember.
quite the 33 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Because I can remember around this time was when I really started to get into Star Trek, because it was, again, if you've been listening to this whole series that we've been doing, you know that my dad is what got me into it. I can remember going to see Star Trek V in theaters in 89, and then somehow we realized that The Next Generation was airing every Saturday night at 7:30 in syndication on Channel 3 here in local Grand Rapids, Michigan. So my dad, being this big, huge audiophile, would have this setup where he had these big, huge speakers, and he wired them up through, like, the TV. So you would turn on the TV, and you would get, like, cinema quality sound. So I can remember watching Star Trek The Next Generation on the weekends we would spend with my dad, and listening to the the hum of the ship through space, and this is just a very visceral turning point memory in my life. So I just feel like this series as a whole is a part of me in a weird way. And I don't know how that's possible for a TV show to be a part of you, but it is. And so it's a huge deal to me to be able to look back on this show. But that was like around season 3 or 4 or somewhere in there. Because I didn't say season 1 until like the show had concluded in 94. And I can remember watching All Good Things live. Like, it was a huge deal. It's like when that show ended to us. It was like, oh my god, this is the biggest thing in the world. Oddly enough, though, being so young at the time, I identified probably most with Commander Data in your description. Being like, I was intrigued by everything. I feel like it was fascinating. And I had to process a lot of what was going on because a lot of it went over my head, being so young. But now, looking back at the series, I'm definitely a Picard with tinges of Troy. Looking back now, I see tinges of being 37 years old, and we are in 2019. You look at certain things, it's like, oh yeah, I guess there is kind of weird things about the female characters and other things on this show. So there's those tinges of Counselor Troy in your description.
Welcome back, Michael.
Thank you.
Okay, and I am Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
The moderator's brother-in-law.
True.
My wife is normally here, but she doesn't do the Star Trek one.
She doesn't.
I pretty much grew up an original series enthusiast. It's my earliest memories watching that with my dad. And at some point, they started airing back-to-back. They'd air an original series episode, followed by the week's Next Gen episode. And I did not love it at first, because like when you're a little kid and you're watching like Kirk punch aliens in the face, and then you get to early Next Gen where it's a lot of like diplomacy, and Picard was very different. They ended up kind of making it more actiony later, but it is a very different feel to it. So it took me probably to like a few years into the show before I actually started to like it. And even then, it was because of the characters, not so much as the plots. So in that regard, I'm Geordie LaForge, based on those, because I absolutely love the characters. I would watch episodes just for Data and just for Worf, and I absolutely love those characters. And then eventually, I didn't love it as much until like the whole thing had ended. I was very critical of it compared to the original series, which I loved. So I liked it, but then now when you look at the legacy of it all, it's almost equal. It's like you can't really subtract M. It's one legacy, and that's where I'm at now versus when I started.
Does that mean you're still Geordie?
Yes. I love the characters still more than the plots. It gets better season 2 onward, but the first season, they're a lot rougher. You could tell they're finding their pacing and their characters are playing off each other. So it's a lot rougher, and then my love for it went up way more, especially Borg and all that, which we'll get into.
All right. Welcome back, Kyle. And of course, my name is Kylie, and if you listen to the very first episode of this Star Trek 50 Plus series, when we were covering the original series first season, I told the story of how I got into Star Trek. It really wasn't via the original series, even though my dad watched the original series and watched the original films. It was via The Next Generation. And why? Because there was a certain character by the name of Wesley Crusher, who was played by Will Wheaton, who was Geordie LaChance in Stand By Me, which is one of my most favorite movies, and I was like, whoa, that's Geordie LaChance, and my dad was watching it, and so I sat down to watch it. I kept watching it because it was good, because I fell in love with all of the characters, and he actually became one of my lesser favorite characters as time progressed, although I never...
All the characters? What about Yar?
I said one of, not the least.
We need to talk about Yark. We need to talk about Yark.
One of the lesser, not the least. But I fell in love with Star Trek The Next Generation. This is my favorite series of all of the Star Treks. I am unwavering in that. I love it to death. I love Captain Picard the mostest out of all of the captains.
Even more than Spot?
Even more than Spot.
Spot.
Spot the cat?
Yes.
Oh, well, I enjoy Spot, but he doesn't appear enough for me to, have that kind of love for him. But he's a very nice cat. Anyway.
He's my second favorite Star Trek pet.
After the dog in Enterprise.
Correct.
I know.
The dog is Becca too.
Porthos, yes.
And he likes cheese.
That's cute. Anyway, The Next Generation is the bestest of the best to me, and I totally love Patrick Stewart with many hearts just because I think he's awesome. So I'm Picard from beginning to end. I love this series so much. Even the first season. I'm very excited to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation for the next 7 episodes because I have the passion. So welcome back, everyone. Of course, we've already done 4 episodes in this series. We've covered the original series. We've covered the animated series. Now we're covering The Next Generation. We're going to start off by talking about what we thought of the series generally, and then we'll kind of work our way into the sort of the episodes we like to rattle off that we like better or like lesser. Talk about The Next Generation. You kind of hinted at some of your overall feels, but expand upon them if you would.
I guess I didn't know people didn't like Yar.
Oh yeah, what?
Yeah.
This is what's happening here?
Yeah.
We
People
like
did not
her.
like her. People hated her when it was on.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
they
I
thought
didn't know
she
that.
was really unlikable.
It's her haircut, maybe.
Well, especially
It's
like
very 1987.
especially
It is
because
at the
like
time.
she was the least favorite character, and then they kind of paired her with Data, who was like hugely popular, and then people took a lot of offense with that.
Well, that's literally the second episode of
Yeah.
the series, and
The Naked Time.
yeah.
But you also have
And
to
they
realize
had
too,
Naked
like
Time.
Yeah, they did.
Denise Crosby didn't even like the character. She wasn't cast as that character. She was cast as Troy. And then very last minute, Roddenberry switched her.
I prefer her over Troy. Troy has never been a favorite of mine. I don't hate her, but I've never really enjoyed her. I don't like the accent, and it confuses me. But I also just don't. I don't like some of the storylines they give.
Yeah,
Troy.
she really contributed like the other characters.
Yeah, I think she's a great actress,
Oh,
and
dear.
she's beautiful. But I just sometimes I'm like, does she have?
Oh dear.
Don't think the writers knew how to write her women or that
And
character.
it never really
Yeah.
got better. I mean, if you look at like First Contact, like Troy in that movie doesn't even feel like Troy from the series.
Oh dear. Oh my, we're gonna have a talk.
Well, Michael, I want to reiterate what we're saying.
Right, I understand.
We just don't think it was developed.
No.
right.
Right.
And she
No,
wasn't
right.
consistent. It was
Right.
like
It's
the
not
writers
like
were,
we don't like the contribution of that actress or that.
I love Marina Sirtis. I love when she pops up, especially, I don't know if she goes to Deep Space Nine, but she's in quite a few episodes of Voyager.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, I enjoy that character, and every time I don't, it's very obviously a writer thing.
Yeah.
And you're saying similar for me with Worf. I love Worf. I don't really like Worf-centered episomes. I don't know why.
Worf-centered episodes.
Yeah, that's not me.
I
Not one of those. Yeah.
I quite enjoy the Counselor Troy character. I'm going to betray that I read some of the Expanded Universe novels, and one of the best novels is Imzadi.
It is so true.
I mean, that's like one of the ones that they actually consider it canon. Like,
Yeah.
Because of it adds so much to the.
Is that her and Frakesy before?
It's like
they
their
get-
entire relationship from beginning to end.
I really like Troy when Majel comes as her mom, which
Loxana.
we don't see in season 1.
Yes,
Yes, we do.
Yes,
do
we do.
Hayden.
Oh,
Yes.
that's right. I think I like that the best because I think the writing gets so interesting in those episodes, and then I'm like really excited.
I really think they don't know how to write women. They know how to write a mother and a daughter relationship. And they also don't. There's so many times where Troy's ability to sense things could end the episode in 15 minutes that they either like skirt her off really quick or she just says what everyone else in the room can tell anyway. Like,
Yeah, which is
he's
the big
being
joke.
dishonest. Yeah, we got it. Like,
Yeah.
and that is a disservice to the character.
Which is why that joke in Galaxy Quest is so funny.
Well, okay. So,
Whoa, wow, okay.
Yeah. The Troy character, the whole idea of Betazoid, Beta Z as a planet, Betazoid as a race, was new to this series.
Uh-huh.
They made him telepathic. She's only half Betazoid, so she's empathic, not telepathic, although she can communicate with her mom. I mean, they're...
And Riker.
And Riker, because they're
Just crazy.
soulmates.
They're
come on.
connected,
They're
yes.
connected. So I do like Counselor Troy. I think you're right in a sense that they didn't know what to do with her early on. I think they got better with her.
Yes.
Uh-huh,
So the first
uh-huh.
season, yeah, she's a little clunky and ham-fisted. She appears in one of those super short dresses in the pilot.
A scant?
and then doesn't have like a real uniform, and it's very low cut most of the time.
She doesn't wear a uniform for literally 5 seasons.
Yeah. So
and only then it's because that admiral, right?
Oh,
Is
yeah.
like, why
No, just
are
the new captain.
Admiral
yeah,
Jellicoe,
the
I
new
think.
Jellicoe.
Jellicoe.
What are you
Jellicoe,
wearing?
that thing.
Yeah.
Jellicoe.
I think that
Chain of command.
she was meant to be like the sexy quotient of the show, and that kind of is weird when you develop it in this very new cast. I also like Worf-centered episodes. I think plot-wise, there's a lot of richness that they're able to get out of that. Really, honestly, truly, they developed the entire Klingon Empire through the eyes of Worf in this series.
I mean, I remember that. I remember, like, growing up watching the movies and the original series, and then the first time I saw a Next Generation episode, I remember seeing a Klingon on the bridge and just, like, gasping. Like, my, like, little kid brain couldn't wrap my head around them coming to peace. And that's part of the reason I would watch it, because I was like, I wanted them to fill in how that Federation and the Klingon came to be like that.
Which they did, and they used
they
Worf
do it
as
in
the
the movie,
bridge. They do in the movie. They do in 6.
I see what all of you guys are saying. I guess I don't feel that way in season 1. That
No,
we got
it's- yeah,
a lot. But
No.
I think
They're more extras.
It's more
in
later.
the-
yeah.
And there's 9 cast members in season.
Well, that's what I'm
1.
saying. You can tell
Yeah,
the first
it's
season because
too
you go
big.
from like the original series where they focus heavily on 3 characters, and then the Next Generation jumps into like 7 characters.
No, I
Well, it's
think
9
it is
in the
9 in
first
season
season.
1 with
Yeah, it
Wesley
is 9 in
and
the
I
first
always
And
forget
Tasha.
Wesley and
Yeah.
Wesley does quite a bit, and sometimes it's like
And
he's
to
the
go-
focus
see
of
some
the
of the
first
other
season.
Well, we don't get very much Geordi, I feel.
No.
You don't get much
We
Geordi
don't.
or
I don't
Worf,
think they
'cause
planned on Geordi being big as
A
he
big
became.
deal.
They weren't. So I don't know if this is true or not, but Geordi was originally supposed to be a homosexual character that I don't know if it was blind as well, but then they kind of were too scared of going that far with that aspect. So I don't know if they had any idea what they were going to do with him. But again,
is that the reason why in Hide and Q, when Wesley becomes an adult, Geordi takes a look and says, "Looking good, Wesley."
Geordi's, I don't know, that's
I think
standard
he's
awkward
just
Geordi.
awkward, yeah.
He's awkward throughout.
But it certainly puts an entirely new level on that line. Now that
Well, if you
say
look at the
that.
whole show, they never figure out, like, romantically what to do with him. He's just terrible.
Other than his
Except for
weird,
that
other
one
than his
episode,
weird
Obsession.
his recreation of that one engineer
Leah
that he
Browns.
admired.
Yeah,
That gets
he's
2
kind
episodes.
of prepubescent most of the show, even when he's turning into... Will Wheaton is well into his 20s, still playing a teenager.
Right.
But to go back to Tasha...
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't done with Troy.
Well,
I
also,
haven't even defended Troy yet, but let's go back to Tasha.
well, I still like Troy better than Tasha because I think Troy starts off with more than one dimension.
Yes, I agree.
Tasha is singularly dimensioned the entire time she's on the show.
Okay, I'm curious. Do we think that Yar was a bad character? Was it a badly written character?
Yar didn't
was
get to
it
move
Denise
past season
Crosby?
Well, I think
was
I think it was everything. You have an actress that didn't want to
didn't
play
wanna
that
be that
character.
character.
She didn't want to. So her passion wasn't there. She didn't try to make her likable.
Right.
She literally asked if they could just put a cardboard cutout at Tactical because so many times she was there so that they could see the legs behind Picard so that they knew the character was there. And then
Some of her writing, I think, was a little clunky. Like, she would say things like, yeah, there were all these rape gangs
she said
everywhere.
rape gangs too many times.
Yeah, she talked about the rape gangs a lot, which would have been a traumatic childhood.
Yeah,
I'm not
but-
saying it wouldn't, but she was it was always matter of fact.
Right.
And she'd be like, oh yeah, there were rape gangs everywhere. That's not something I'd casually be telling.
One of the things that makes Yar difficult to really like is we don't get... Think if we didn't get more of Worf after season 1. There's a lot we
Right.
wouldn't have found out. We don't find out much about her planet. I can't even tell you the name of her homeworld, which I think we could have easily developed. It
Right.
clearly isn't part of the Federation. So I think there would have been a lot more storylines, and we could have developed more with her, and there could have been a lot of fun moments with her and Data later. But we just don't get that at
Right,
all.
I know. And I know that's because she didn't want to do it anymore, but I don't know. I like Yar for what we get of her. I think that her character had a lot of potential that was wasted either by the writing or the fact that she just wasn't given enough time to be there. I don't know what it is, but I've always liked her character, and of course I love Troy. But I think there's something, and I know we probably shouldn't go into the final season, but it seems to me there's a final episode when she appears there and Picard sees her in the past, and it's like this big moment of like, oh my god, you're here, you're alive. And it's like, there's some, I don't know, just that there's a lot of meaning in that moment.
I think the most developed relationship is Yar with Picard, especially to the times her or her as an actress come up later in the show.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That they play into more.
Well, and we know there was something going on behind the scenes that wasn't very friendly to women, because Troy was ready to quit until she saw the script for the opener to season 2.
The child.
We know
That was the
Beverly.
executive producer, that Hurley.
Maurice O'Hurley.
And
Who also screwed over Crusher.
yes.
Yeah,
So,
well, she
I mean,
leaves in the second season.
we don't
right?
really know if that played into Yar
Yeah.
either.
Crusher.
Gates McFadden?
Gates McFadden. She did Comic-Con and she talked all about it, and she was very frank. She's like, at the time she couldn't even talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she's like, the first season working under him was very misogynistic, and it was really hard to work, and she's the one that voiced her opinion about it, like, above all the other women, because they're afraid of losing their jobs, and then that's how she got replaced. And it wasn't until they got rid of him, I think, that she came back.
But Patrick Stewart, begged her to come back.
Yeah.
He wanted her to come back and was like, I promise you it's a lot better now. And that's why she does come back.
What I do think season 1 gets right, I'm sure Kylie will jump in because we're the resident women on this panel. I like that the women were in these careers, like they were the chief medical officer, the only counselor, and the head of security. Like, that's pretty badass. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome for the 80s.
Yeah.
We still don't, but in the 80s, mental health, like, people weren't taking it seriously. So to show it in the future, like, yeah, it's a utopia.
She's front
and we
and center.
still...
She's right there.
Yeah.
That a ship in space with a lot of families would need a counselor.
And she has the power to tell the captain he's unfit and that
Right,
he can't
exactly.
serve.
Both of
And
two of the women
both of
can
them
do that.
and they do at one point tell him to step down over the course of the series. So I thought that's pretty cool.
And Crusher's... So in the 80s, women as doctors, not always treated with respect. She's also a single mom, and she's in charge of all the doctors on that whole ship.
Oh, R.I.P. Jack Crusher.
And she questions the captain on a number of occasions in this first season. So, I mean...
Well, there's some animosity. Not animosity, there's some weirdness.
there's
Sexual tension.
Yeah.
Well, the last time she saw him, he came to tell her that her husband died.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's some weirdness there. And
And
then
I mean-
her son is like with her and like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and the captain's like, he can't come on the bridge, like, get away.
No
So, like,
children.
yeah, there's some stuff there. I mean, we all know what happens later.
Right. Well, and part of the and he has kind of that father figure aspect to Wesley, too.
Well, I mean, that's what a lot of people...
Mm-hmm.
In the fandom, there's a lot of people who speculate that Picard is really Crusher's dad. And that...
I don't buy that.
No.
By the end of the
I'm just
show,
saying, there's a lot of people
no.
who really believe that. Like, they are like, I don't care either way. I don't think it really affects anything.
I just want to go back to Yar for a minute, because we did a lot of defending of it based upon the environment, but I think Sarah said something that kind of hits it on the head. You know, she did have there is a lot of potential for the character, and no doubt if she had stayed, we would have realized some of that. But what we got was so stilted, because she does come from this hard planet, and the only thing you're supposed to assume is she rose above it and became the head of tactical of the Enterprise 1701D. But every time she was at the forefront of a story plot in season 1, it just, to me, felt really tedious. Unlike any of the other characters. I liked all the other characters. I wanted to know more about the other characters.
Well, one of her episodes is the worst episode of the season.
Is that the fight one?
Code of Honor.
Code of Honor, yeah.
You don't like that one?
No.
It's probably the worst.
I can't. I think it's awkward, but I mean, it's not my least favorite.
It's a little bit misguided for the early next gen
Right, yeah.
pantheon. There's a lot of
We can quote Frakes on it.
uncomfortableness about that episode.
But she's so tough and strong in that.
I know.
Like, she really works it out.
That's the cool thing about her. That's one of the things I love about her character, is that she's this great, strong woman and person. She's a strong person, and, you know, it's just...
Well,
So is Dr. Crusher, though, and
And
Dr.
that's what I love
Crusher's
about
more
her.
interesting.
I understand that. I know. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading more into her character than is actually there. Maybe I'm really drawing a lot from what is being given from my own personal, just like, interpretation of things. Like, just by way of example, in the Naked Now, the second episode, which probably terrible to put that episode second, but when she is with Data, and the fact that her character, character becomes like super sexual when she's drunk, or whatever you want to call that disease
Under
that they're
the
coming
influence
from.
of alien virus.
Thank you. I mean, you could theoretically argue that running from rape gangs your entire teenage years could maybe possibly screw with your connection with your own sexuality in some way. I don't know. I mean, this is probably really reaching, but I feel like there's something that could make sense there.
I think what we're all saying is kind of the same thing. We wish she had stuck around just to see what would have happened.
I mean, yeah, and they could have developed her relationship with Data.
Right.
And, like, this idea of her
I
trying
was
to connect with
her leaving.
somebody.
I mean, in retrospect, you don't miss her.
You don't miss her.
Just like I don't miss Wesley when he leaves later.
No.
Because
They ran the
nine
course
main
of him.
nine main characters is hard to service well.
But I also think Wesley actually had an arc that was concluded by the time he left.
His arc is very good. I love it.
And the only...
Really?
His arc is good
I
up
hate
in
the way he ended. But we'll get to that.
the way he ended is different from the way he was set.
Left the show.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. I thought you meant the end, which I hate.
I'd say the real end is him getting completely cut out of a movie.
Yeah.
Aw.
Which he's not... Will
You see,
Wheaton
like,
is
his
not
shoulder.
happy about in real life.
Oh, I guess I don't know that story. Which movie?
Nemesis.
Insurrection.
They filmed
It's Insurrection.
No, it's Nemesis.
It's
There's a
Insurrection when they get married, and that's where
That's
he's cut out.
Nemesis.
Nemesis
supposed to be
is
at the
when
wedding.
they get married.
I don't think so.
Yes, it is.
You don't think
I've seen
so?
that movie 100
So
times.
you think there's a
I've
movie
always-
after Insurrection where
Insurrection is where they go through the Briar Patch to the planet where you don't age.
with the Baku,
Yes, I know.
The wedding is at the beginning of
Admiral
Nemesis.
Dougherty?
Okay.
Nemesis
Well,
is
whichever
the-
the wedding is, he was cut out of the wedding.
He had a bunch of
It's
scenes.
the last
yeah.
one. Nemesis is the last next gen movie.
I know Nemesis is the last next-gen movie.
That's when Troy and Riker get married, and then they go off on the Titan.
What did
Yeah.
they do in Insurrection?
It's
Insurrection,
just
they all
a
went.
weird episode.
They all went down to the
episode
planet.
Of the next gen. That's what it is.
And they
It's been
fought-
a long time since I've watched either of those two.
In
Yeah.
Insurrection, they fall back in love, and then she shaves him in a jacuzzi.
Yes.
What
Oh.
He shaved his
movie
beard.
is this?
It's
the one that we went
Insurrection.
to see.
Oh,
Yeah,
that she shaves
exactly.
his beard?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
I did
true. I
not think
remember
that's
that.
what you meant. And
It's a weird movie where there's a corrupt Federation.
I remember
guy
the
and-
plot.
Admiral Dougherty.
I just thought the wedding was at the beginning of that
the
weirdness.
Vulcans.
No.
Not
That's-
the
that's
Remans.
first
That's
contact.
the
Oh,
Remans.
That's Nemesis. Because there's a clone of Picard.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
Nemesis
And who was
is
raised by Remans.
Yeah.
And then it just copies Wrath of Khan for like the back
Right,
minutes of the
right.
movie.
Well, stay tuned for our movie wrap-up episode.
Correct.
We're gonna need to rewatch before that. At least
Not
Kylie
me.
and I.
I got
I've
it.
seen First
I wanted to do
Contact a
A
hundred
million times.
times.
'Cause that's the best one. And Generations is good too. We'll get there later.
Yeah.
Also, Wrath of Khan. Anyway.
This is going to be a long
And
podcast.
Voyage Home and Undiscovered
Yeah,
Country.
yeah, that's
for
really
later.
Just not the motion
4,
picture.
6, and 7.
So,
He looked at you.
So.
Favorite
So yeah,
episodes?
okay, Yar.
Oh,
Okay, fine. Well, we didn't really talk about the show as a general thing. We
So
kind of
talk
just
about it.
went right into the
We're
characters.
talking about the
which is
characters
fine.
in general.
Well, the characters, I guess, are part of the show.
On the Enterprise, it's their continued mission, but this
It
time
was sup-
there's families and
It was originally
Kids.
being developed not 100 years later and like almost a reboot, and it was supposed to
Star
be
Trek Phase
Shatner.
2. Or whatever
Yeah,
the title
it
was.
was supposed to be Kirk, and instead of Crusher, it was supposed to be what's her face from the Genesis Project. I
Oh,
forget her doctor.
yeah, Carol Marcus.
That's
Yes,
why there's
good
the
job.
weird love interest. And instead of Wesley, it was supposed to be their kid, who
David.
David.
Yep.
I knew that one.
So that's why there's also some hiccups in season 1. Is they're like, we're not going to do that. We're going to do a whole new cast, and we'll have to add different characters too.
Well, they
and
do-
that's also why I
mean,
think Worf
They
and
do
Geordi
use
are
a
just
lot of.
there.
They do use a lot of the Phase 2 scripts for the Next Generation. Like they actually, I can't remember which ones, but the child in season 2 was written for Phase 2, but they gave it to Troy.
Ever.
That's for
Season
season 2.
two.
Exactly.
We're on season 1, which some people are contending is
Well-
the worst of the 7 seasons.
Well, let's talk about the pilot because I actually kind of like it.
Encounter at Fox.
I love the pilot.
I'll say, yeah, it's pretty well reviewed. It's just the rest of the season after.
Oh,
Not all of it, but
Yeah.
No, the back half most people like, but like you can tell all the writers from the first half quit
Yeah.
because it was such a trouble in production.
Yeah.
Part of the tension between Roddenberry and O'Hurley was Roddenberry's trying to make Star Trek, and O'Hurley came off of, I don't know, some cop drama. I can't remember what, but Roddenberry was pretty firm that the cast, the main characters, get along. And
Right.
he was constantly... Then there's no conflict. He couldn't figure out how to create conflict
Right.
with their missions.
Yeah. He like
Which
wanted
is
a lot of
where
weird
all the
stuff
conflict is supposed to be.
like he wanted like a lot of like corrupt federation and stuff like things in a
conspiracy.
society that wouldn't make sense in a Star Trek society because it's supposed to be almost utopian.
Well, he had a little bit of that. with
Yeah,
the
you can see
one
where it comes
conspiracy.
in.
the conspiracy thing.
Which I don't mind that, because it's another alien species coming
Right,
into
exactly.
it. Like, there's a way to do that in a Star Trek way. But that was part of the contention there. Encounter at Farpoint was
The
supposed
pilot.
to be a one-parter with no cue.
Yeah.
And then Paramount demanded it to be a two-parter, and Roddenberry was really, really upset. And then finally he just came up with a storyline where a character can just pop in to, like, watch their first mission.
And he becomes one of the best characters of the entire lexicon.
Right.
John Delancey, if you're listening.
You are the best.
You're the best.
And
No.
we also see the saucer separate.
Yes, I was going to mention that. This is different because this ship pulls apart.
Which then it doesn't do again for like 20 years.
It does
I
it
mean-
again in
There's a
season
couple times
1,
in the
and
season,
then
yeah.
it stops.
And then
All
it
the
does it
movie-
in First Contact.
And it does it in
And
First
Generations.
Deanna Troy gets to
to sit at the helm.
she's the helm
Right.
when they crash land into the planet. Good job,
And they
Deanna.
all-
I love
die.
Marina Sirtis' story about that. She tells a great story about the saucer separation scene in Generations and her reaction to it. It's so
First
funny.
Contact. Isn't it First
No,
Contact?
it's
Generations.
Generations.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's Generations.
Oopie, I was
They
wrong.
follow the little Borg ship into the past for First Contact.
Generations, we lose the D, so the rest of the movies are the Enterprise E.
Yes.
So that's actually the
Because
D
they
getting
crash
destroyed.
land the saucer
Yeah.
on the planet.
It's funny because that whole saucer separation sequence in Encounter at Farpoint, and I'm gonna sound like a total hypocrite saying this, but it seems so obvious to me that that's the padding right there. Is like that whole first hour of Encounter at Farpoint is just like, let's see what this ship can do. So here's a 10-minute sequence of the ship
And
separation.
yet, defender of the motion picture.
I'm saying it's going to make me sound like a hypocrite because it doesn't make sense that I don't like
With
it.
the 20-minute docking,
But you also have to realize, too,
I know.
Star
I'm well
Trek
aware of
fans,
this.
Star Trek fans, the ship is like a character.
Yeah.
So they did have to
Yes.
spend a lot of time showing you like the holodeck and getting you reacquainted with,
And
because it's going to be important later.
Right, exactly.
And so yeah, it can feel boring at times, but it is part of the fabric of the universe.
I think they were hoping to use, like, I think they intentionally were like, we're going to film every angle of the separation and coming back so we can use bits and pieces for when we do this later.
Right.
They didn't do it
They
later.
had to do it a lot.
But they definitely, I think, Roddenberry's like, yeah, we're going to show all of it.
It just
I
doesn't seem like
enjoy
the plot of that section of the episode is just like not a lot happening.
It's him testing Riker.
I know.
Michael.
That was almost Napoleon Dynamite-ish. But yes, that's what it is. I enjoy Encounter at Farpoint. Hint, that's going to appear in my top 3 of this.
I like it.
I
I
especially
like the
like-
second half.
Especially like little old McCoy getting tour
Yeah.
Data giving him the tour.
Yes,
and then
that's great.
him comparing Data to Spock and
Yes.
like for me like that was the perfect handing of the torch.
It was.
And for a long time, because like I didn't see him in order, so I didn't see Encounter at Farpoint until like I was like halfway through the series, and then like I almost teared up because I never saw that moment.
I also love that he's the only admiral that his uniform is also a cardigan. It's a very loose cardigan.
I think I've watched this at least 3 times through, or I'm on my at least third. It might be 4th time through, and I always forget that he's in it.
Because it's right, it's in the middle, too.
It's meant to be
They're
a
not-
surprise.
There it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
And I forget, and now I'll forget again, and the next time I'll get excited.
No,
I
but it's
just-
a tradition they continue with the rest of the shows.
Yeah. And generally speaking, I think Encounter at Farpoint is just a strong TV pilot
It
in
is a
general.
strong. Yes,
I
it
It
agree.
sets
the
up
characters well.
so much for the remainder of the 7 seasons. You get all the seeds of the core of the characters, all of them, every single one, even Worf, although his is kind of minimal. And you also get Q, who becomes a recurring villain for more than one series.
I mean, he comes back this season.
Yes,
Right.
multiple seasons, and in Deep Space Nine, and in Voyager. So it's like, there's just a lot. Plus, the ending of it is so beautiful. not only
the resolution of
the
conflict.
graphics and the visual effects, but also just the story that they're trying to tell, and you don't know what Q is up to, and then you kind of see all of the things happen.
And he's up to nothing. He's just watching.
He's testing them.
Well, not just like Encounter at Farpoint. Like, how many series do you know where like the first episode is so connected to the series finale?
Yes,
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
I mean,
it's like the perfect bookends.
yeah.
So,
And it's like, it almost makes me wonder, like, when they did the whole Q testing, if they knew they were going to eventually do something like that. I mean, it'd be crazy, but...
I doubt it.
No, not in the show at this era, no.
But I think they were smart enough to, when they tried to wrap up the series, to say, where can we go full circle? Oh,
Right.
that thing. Let's do that.
Well, and it brought back O'Brien, which we don't know is O'Brien in the pilot, but he's there.
we don't know it the whole first season. He appears a couple times, but...
Yeah, I like him.
And then obviously it brought back Yar.
Yeah. But that's for when we cover the 7th season.
Yes.
We'll talk about All Good Things in great detail.
Oh,
But Encounter at Farpoint is just, I think it's a beautiful set of Star Trek episodes. It's a great TV pilot, and it's one of my favorites of the series.
And they also start setting up the threat of the Ferengi.
Yes, they do. Oh, those
the
Ferengi.
Ferengi.
Sarah's face.
My least favorite villains.
Yeah, mine too. They're a bunch of clowns.
They're more villains to the franchise.
Yeah.
Even though I enjoy some
There are
moments.
some Ferengi characters that have great moments, but as a race, they're just so grating. I know they're supposed to be, but...
Right. That first episode, oh my god.
They're
I
just a
skipped
bunch
over
of
it.
money-hungry clowns, I'm telling you.
I mean, I would, like...
Yeah.
You skipped over the last outpost?
When I was re-watching all the episodes up until... Because I'd seen this first season, like, a couple different times. So I was like, you know, I don't necessarily need to watch every episode in detail. So in order to prepare for this recording, I watched mostly episodes I wasn't that familiar with, or episodes that I really loved. And that was one that was like, I'll just skip
it's
over that
Ferengi.
one.
Don't need to see it. Yeah.
Well, I just think that the Ferengi is introduced terribly in that episode because of the way that, I mean, the weird way that they introduce them in close up and on the viewing screen, and they're like doing that weird seething thing with their teeth and everything, and humans, and it's just like, oh my god. I mean, I like the premise of the episode. It's a really cool premise, the idea of the two factions thinking that
trap.
the other is sabotaging them when in fact it's the planet down below. That's pretty cool, but it's just like, it was just so grating to... I was just like, nope.
I mean, that's how I feel about every Ferengi, especially when they showed up on Enterprise.
I like the battle better. I like the battle better than the last outpost.
Okay, the last outpost. Armin Shimmerman.
Yes, that's true.
Appears as a random one.
Mm-hmm. That is very true.
It's pretty mysterious. Like, we don't get a lot of Ferengi in that episode as well. And that episode also sets up, oh man, it's in the later season, those corridors that they use, that species use, comes back later in the show. So you might want to revisit them.
Maybe I should have to.
Because of the Guardian, the Archons or something, the last of the Archons. That comes up, I think it even comes up again in Deep Space Nine.
Do you think when Armin Shimmerman got hired for Deep Space Nine, he was just really grateful for the gig, or he was like, oh, I gotta wear this makeup every freaking day for the...
He's
I think
a huge Star Trek fan.
Yeah,
he's like obsessive.
Yeah, but that makeup, oh my gosh, he was probably in the makeup chair for like...
Hours.
Time.
It's usually hours at a
The
time.
Curse of the Star
I
Trek.
can't imagine. Well, I just want to rip it off and not do umox.
Sarah.
It's gross, the ears. Ugh.
Armin Shimmerman appears twice in this season.
He does.
What's the other one?
He's the face in the box.
Oh, for Haven.
Yes.
I forgot that was him.
He's the face in the box?
The
At the
box that
beginning of
says,
Haven.
greetings, here's your bounty or whatever.
That's right.
I actually have The Last Outpost as one of my honorable mentions just because it is a fairly convincing introduction of this race that, again, is repeatedly used in multiple series.
I give it
most to effect in Deep Space Nine.
Right. I give it an average rating for me. It's an average rating, but...
I'm kind of with Kyle. I have no patience for the Ferengi. I just don't. I don't care that deeply about them. And I know they like profit and whatever.
They work better as somewhat comic relief, which is what they eventually seem to become in Deep Space Nine.
They did, because people are accusing them of being racist caricatures.
Yeah.
And
So they had to switch
are.
directions.
Exactly.
There is a very comedic episode of Voyager where they appear, but
Which is a sequel to an episode of Next Gen.
He said that so
I
definitively.
can tolerate them in small doses, but when we get to Deep Space Nine, you're going to see the struggle's real. 'Cause I get.
So you want to talk about, is there anything more you want to say about the series overall, or do you want to start getting into...
One of my favorite episodes of the entire run is in this season, though, so I can mention that. Data lore.
Oh,
It's
yes.
on my
I
best
agree with
of
that.
list.
Lore is in my top Star Trek villains. I absolutely love him. I mean, obviously because I love Data and anything Data-centric, but I just love this whole idea of his brother being literally his polar opposite. It's the whole Batman-Joker thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
how...
he's just so good at playing both roles.
I was going to say, how brilliant is Brent
Brent Spiner.
Spiner? Underrated
He's-
as an actor.
Oh yeah, and this
time.
the Data lore is probably one of the best examples of an actor playing two characters in the same scenes.
Right.
Well,
And
it
then
doesn't
just
even
being-
seem like it's him.
No.
Obviously, it's him.
No.
But
It's
so
ridiculous
different.
how
like
good a job he
yeah,
does.
exactly, like how devious he can be as Lore, and then you see how childlike he is as Data. It's literally completely polar opposites. And I think like that
And he's-
episode is probably what pretty much cemented him as being the second character of the entire show. And
Right.
And he plays Lore pretending to be Data, and we're
So
still
subtle, yeah.
Yeah, you
we're
see
still
the
there
differences.
with it, and it's just so good.
Yeah, yeah.
That is definitely one of
I
the
mean, and
classics
that
of
one
the series.
has thoroughfare. Like, I mean, it's important through like almost every season. There's called. I mean, that's the first time we learn more about Data's history too, and how he was created.
Dr. Noonien Sue.
I used to not have any patience for Data. I know. Like the first time we watched it, I was like, he's fine. I don't really give it much.
Shocking.
But then, like
That is
the
shocking.
second time that we watched it, I really, really.
But part of
he
it, I
became
think,
one of my
helps is
favorites.
seeing his whole arc.
Yeah.
It
It
is
makes
my
you
second
appreciate
favorite
more,
character.
especially like First Contact and seeing like everywhere he goes in Generations, everywhere he goes, and
He
then
sings
seeing.
in First Contact. So cute.
He dances in Next Gen.
Yeah.
This is kind of
He
ridiculous.
plays the violin, too.
But there's back in the like around 93, 94, they had a Star Trek The Next Generation screensaver package you could buy at the store. Yeah, we're getting really 90s here. And one of the screensavers you could choose was Data dancing. Where it would you would get like this like meaty music, and then suddenly it would be Brent Spiner as Data tap dancing to music, and that was the screensaver, and it was like the best thing ever.
You had it, didn't you? You bought it, didn't you?
Oh, of course we did. We had it on our Windows 95 computer, and it was the best thing ever.
So who thinks Data just doesn't realize that he does have emotions? Because I feel like there's things he does.
He does,
that
that
are
where
very
it's like he-
emotional.
Right, of course, yeah.
I think it's innate to his programming, which is
Just-
why the chip is really just the thing that augments it and helps him.
He either
Right.
doesn't
Later on.
understand them is the only
I mean,
thing, or he
there's
doesn't.
a book that plays up that where he like gets like amnesia and he doesn't know he's an android and he has like emotions. And I know it's not canon, but I really love that book because I love that idea that
And I think it's-
that like the fact that he knows he's synthetic, he's holding himself back.
I think Data is one of the most brilliant characters in fiction,
Right.
not just in Star Trek, just because he's so complex. He has so many layers. You really get that sense of science versus spirituality with him. You get the sense of the human condition. He becomes the mirror to everything else that's happening, while at the same time he's like practically a superhero. He can do a bunch of stuff that nobody else can do.
Yeah, like
He is-
Picard will just be like, calculate that, and he's like, it's this.
Or jumps
He's so
down a
fast.
big damn hole to go save Dr. Crusher, who's injured on that one planet.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's that kind of stuff.
He's good to have around. Why you would ever leave him out of an away mission, you wouldn't.
No.
Yeah.
I agree with all of that. And the thing that pushes it over the edge for me is that it exists in Star Trek. So it's not even... We get episodes later that challenge it, but on the Enterprise, according to Picard and the cast, he's sentient. There's no question about it. He's equal, and even Data even says it makes sense to send me because I'm expendable.
Yeah.
No, you're just the right person for this jet. Like,
Right.
And it's crazy because it's like, you know, when they created that character, they just thought, oh, we'll do opposite Spock. You know,
Right,
someone
yeah.
who wants to be human but doesn't have emotions. But he became so much more nuanced in that simple premise.
And in some ways mirrored Spock. You know, Spock...
It takes a lot of the things to a logical extreme.
Correct, exactly. But at the same time, Data allows for things that Spock never did, except when Spock was at his weakest. So he almost becomes an analog to the Spock story as opposed to an opposite. It's like, here's Spock's journey, and he's really not so far off. He just doesn't want to admit it. Here's Data's journey. He's really not so far off. He wants to admit it, but he somehow can't.
He doesn't know. I don't think he knows that he's as close as he is.
Yeah.
Like,
And
kind of
just-
like Kyle said.
And like he's just so perfect with Picard because he almost ends up being like Picard. It's almost like a surrogate kind of father, older brother for
My
him.
two favorite characters in one
Exactly.
scene is always
And
fun.
I think that's why everyone loves First Contact so
Right.
much because it's. I mean, the whole finale is like Picard and Data like together saving the day, and it's just I love it. It's just that's why he's my favorite character.
I think when we get to season 2, I'm going to tease, we get to look at Data in a whole new way through a different character's eyes, and we'll talk about how it looked different. Because you said everybody really accepts him on the Enterprise.
Nick said that to be fair.
So during season 1 they do, so we'll see what happens. Tune in, listeners.
I know what you're talking
Me
about.
too.
Well,
We
you
won't
all
watch
know.
the series.
But, I mean, we'll get to that in season 2, and we can remember that we teased it here, but...
Maybe we've touched on so many of the cast or the main characters. I feel like we should talk about at least Riker before we move
Yeah, we
on.
really haven't mentioned him much.
I adore
like
Riker.
Riker.
I really like
I
him.
do too.
He's a great
I
character.
just
Yeah.
thought we
He's
should talk about
basically
him.
the Kirk of this Enterprise without the power,
Right.
because he's the one who gets all the women.
I mean,
Well, he's also Kirk-like because he's the one going on the
He's
away
doing-
missions.
Right.
I mean, I remember that in the first episode when he pretty much lectures Picard on like as his duty as the first officer, like you're never going on an away mission. And like when you grow up watching the original series, you're like, you can say that to the captain.
Things
They
should
had a
change
much
it a lot.
smaller crew. Time evolves. Whatever.
This is what I
It's
like
100
about
years later.
Riker. So this is one of my favorite things about Riker. He gets opportunities to move on and captain his own ship, but he doesn't want that. He wants to learn from Picard, and he wants to be on this ship, and he knows his contribution.
But
Which
he
is
just he
interesting.
appreciates where he is, whereas
Yes.
everyone else is like looking for that foothold up and constantly moving.
Which is what he wanted until he got
Got there.
there. Well, he did choose this, but it mirrors the Kirk not realizing that Kirk laments in the movies, like
he stepped away from that.
Captain of the
spot.
Enterprise is better than Admiral. This is first in command of the Enterprise, first officer of the Enterprise is better than your own captaincy. Especially if you're just going back like transport vessels, the hood, get out of here.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned the whole idea that Riker he wants to be the first officer on here and wants to learn from Picard because that's not what Troy says.
Well,
that's actually the whole reason that their relationship ended is because she knew that he wanted more than anything was to be a starship captain and that their relationship would get in the way of that. Obviously, that's not what he wants over time, and that's why they're able to rekindle the relationship and able to get married is because he realizes, oh, wait, actually, I don't want to be a captain of a starship. I want to be with you.
Well, I
Therefore-
would also contend that his attitude changed because she was on the ship.
Well, there
Yeah.
you go. Okay.
I mean, that's true too. I love their relationship. They
Oh, yeah. It's a
are
great
clearly in love
relationship.
the whole time, but they're just good friends throughout this show, and they trust each other. They can confide in each other,
Well, that's-
and
I
it
always-
doesn't affect
Yeah,
their
I always
other
love that
romantic
idea
obligations.
too. That two people could have this deep past and not be scarred by it. Like,
Right.
They could work together and be productive and friends. Like that was amazing. I mean, because you watch so much TV and they would just, most shows would like really lay into the drama of that and it gets soapy. But
Which is why, like Troy, as the series progresses, they develop this, and maybe her purpose is to be one half of this pair, but in the end it ends up becoming richer because the two of them are together. But I also feel the same way about Crusher and Picard.
Oh, I can't. I can't with that. I love them.
I love them so much.
They are great.
It's a big misstep that they didn't actually end up together by the end.
I don't think it's a misstep.
I would have enjoyed it more if they had, not the first 5 seasons, like eventually gotten together. And I feel like it was a train that was on the track that her being gone for a season they never really picked back up.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's a misstep only because I like the idea of them. Yes, there's obviously a really great deep relationship between them, and there's a deep potential. And I don't know if this is going to happen in Picard, and I was thinking about this, watching some first episode
There's still Star
season.
Trek Picard.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, like, I was watching first episode, like, When the Bow Breaks, for instance, was an example where that develops some of his weird, hands-off feeling towards children, and there's multiple episodes in the series overall where Picard is like, I don't know how I feel about kids. I wonder if that's going to come up in Picard, where it's like, now that he's, like, a very old man and looking back on his life.
I mean, it came up in Generations.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, there's that whole idea of just like, am I missing out on something because I'm a starship captain?
I mean,
pursue a relationship with
Generations,
Crusher?
his entire fantasy in Generations, his perfect world is him with kids.
Exactly.
It seemed like a lot of kids, too.
Yeah. And if I recall, you don't see who he would have pictured as their mom. Do they show it?
We don't.
Yeah.
No.
To be fair,
I mean,
I've seen the movie,
Whoopi shows up,
Yeah.
so maybe it
That would be weird.
They do have some weird undisclosed history that they never really go into.
Yeah.
I would like more explanation of the Guinan backdrop, but that's for later seasons on our Star Trek Picard episodes.
Right.
Oh my gosh, are we going to see Guinan and Picard?
I hope so. Why not? What's she doing? The View? Who cares? Bring her on there.
She'd probably do it.
I totally love it.
She
was
loves
really-
it.
fan.
She was really upset they didn't bring her back for First Contact because the Borg destroyed her species.
Right.
So, like, they could have really laid into, like, Guinan has more insight even than Picard on the Borg.
And this fits in season 1 because when her friend LeVar Burton told her that he was cast in this new Star Trek thing, she at that time said,
I want to be a part of this.
want to be a part of that. And it took over a year because they were
They
developing.
didn't really believe. They were
and,
like, yeah,
and he was
right.
like, "Oh, you do? Oh, okay." And they were like, "Yes,
Especially
Whoopi
at that
can do
time,
stuff."
a TV actress jumping onto a TV
She's
show.
a big movie actress.
She was a big
right there.
star.
Yeah.
She was past Ghost.
Part
Yeah.
of the reason that,
She won the Oscar.
No, it wasn't.
Wasn't
Was
it?
it?
No,
No, she won the Oscar for Ghost.
She
That's
won
not what
She
no,
did.
it's
This was
contending.
before
I'll say
Ghost.
Ghost was
contending the
wasn't
timeline.
Ghost 1990 or
yeah.
Ghost was
89?
90, yes.
Yeah,
you're right.
yeah.
Punch the
She-
color purple. How's that?
And
Yeah, there you
Jumpin'
go.
Jack Flash. She
Yeah,
done Jumpin'
she
Jack
was in a
Flash.
lot of
And she was
Sorry, I misunderstood.
comedian.
Nope, that's okay. So did anyone listen to her interview with David Tennant on his podcast?
No.
Well, no. Now I need to listen to
Okay,
this.
everyone do it. But she talks about how, she was like they didn't believe that she would do it, and like she couldn't get them to like really believe her that she would do it. Like it took a while, and she was like, "No, I literally will do anything. Like I don't need a big part." And she could only do a couple episodes.
She
wanted.
loves
can only
Star
really
Trek.
do
She
it, the
She
day of film.
idolized and befriended Nichelle Nichols.
Yeah.
Yeah, she has we probably covered this in the original series, but she said as a little girl when Star Trek came on and she saw Uhura, she ran into the kitchen saying, "Mom, there's someone on the TV that looks like us, and they're not a maid or a butler or anything." Like, so that it definitely meant a lot to her.
Yeah. I have a question about Beverly and Jean-Luc. We're on a first name basis.
So,
I know this is going into the season 7, but we're talking about the relationship. Do they get married then and divorced, or is that
No,
not?
that is a hit. That is a possible
That's a
future
possible future.
Okay.
that
Well,
didn't quite happen.
But it
Sarah
didn't. It
struggles
didn't.
with
I
time.
do. Temporal mechanics, and
You're like Janeway.
You would think I would be better, but I'm a little Swiss cheese brain from all my quantum leaping, so I don't necessarily know.
If you remember the
related.
time frame of that future where he's all really old, based on the years, that's the year Picard takes place.
Yeah, I know.
So things went
wow.
really different. Yeah.
He aged way better.
Yeah, it's like, that's the funny thing to me. And they have pictures of him. He's like really old, and then like now, and he looks almost the same.
He's the same.
Right?
So that
I'm
okay.
so excited.
I know.
Okay, so as far as we know, and Picard hasn't aired, they never get together.
The only thing we don't know. We don't know.
They share some moments.
They
but
could have been
don't
banging
get
the whole time, and they
lasting.
just didn't.
I was gonna say the way it's edited, like they could have had a relationship and put it in the background. You never
Right,
really know
it never
because they're
was.
both professionals at the top of their game.
And it probably wouldn't be appropriate.
Based on what? Wait, what was your
I feel like
question?
Starfleet's very lax about that.
Really?
Oh,
I don't think they care. I mean, if you look at all the relationships on
Yeah.
Dax
I said they
and-
could have been together the whole time, and then we don't know.
in Next Gen?
Yeah. I mean, probably not.
I feel like there are moments later in the series where
There
they're
are.
on
where it
like
feels,
dates.
yeah,
There
there's
are.
things where it feels
Well, they
like
do breakfast every day.
Right,
Which,
exactly.
that
So
breakfast
that's-
is...
Ooh.
Breakfast, when did that breakfast start?
There's also that episode where she goes down and it was her grandmother's house and it has the haunting piece. There's some moments in that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Well,
like,
when
I
she's
always,
injured
and when I was a
and she's
kid, I
very
just thought they
sick,
were
so-
together. Like, when as a kid watching them, I just thought they were together, and which was one of the reasons when I went and saw Insurrection, and, like, he has this random new love interest, I was like, that doesn't feel right.
Beverly is pretty jealous of Vosh, but then he has a girlfriend in an episode that he has to send on, like, an away mission that she almost dies. We'll get to
I just
that.
feel like some of the writers, like, really like to play in that, and the other ones just completely forgot.
It's a will they, won't they thing that just doesn't get fully put
There's
into
definitely
it.
writers that didn't
Yeah.
read the Bible. Like, they don't...
The show Bible, not the actual Bible.
Let's hope that Gates appears in Picard.
Yeah, I am
so
super...
too.
I don't know why they would do this,
They're
but...
being a little tight-lipped, all the people.
They
except
are.
for Jerry Ryan, she's kind of throwing
I mean,
out
I think
more.
No,
it'd be
but
weird
there's
that they're...
Jonathan
I think it'd be
Frakes.
weird that they have, like, all these other ones and not have her, especially
But-
since she's still...
LeVar, Michael Dorn, and Gates are the ones that aren't popping up in anything. Like,
Yeah.
we know that Frakes, Marina Sirtis, Brent Spiner are all in. Even Hugh, from 2 episodes of Next Gen, are in Picard. But there's nothing else about the rest of them.
Well,
which
one can only hope.
yes. Or maybe it'll be season 2. Because as we left Gates in not Insurrection, Nemesis, a deleted scene had her going to be the head of Starfleet Medical.
Yes.
She's a good doctor.
But this is for later episodes. We're jumping ahead of ourselves.
So hard.
Let's get back
Well,
to
it's all a
season
tapestry. It
1.
all comes back to season
yeah.
1.
Next Gen. Let's talk about our episodes
I won't
now.
let that go.
Oh, we didn't mention the introduction of the holodeck. I mean, it's
Yeah,
kind of
and
important,
the-
but
and
what's
did.
our
We
point?
sort of did in
Barely.
Encounter at Bar Point.
We just mentioned that it existed, but I mean, as far as Star Trek, like, this was very new and something
Right.
they leaned heavily into.
I want a holodeck.
And it was new for the holodeck was new technology. So when it goes wrong, it's because they're still figuring it out. And even in
Right,
season
right.
1, they could have a person with no personality that just reacts and a landscape. So that's why when there's issues, people always have problems with the holodeck technology. And it's just new. They're figuring it out. It gets better.
Except for, and then Discovery, like,
You
oh
seem
no,
a
it's
little
80 years
defensive.
I
old.
am defensive.
Who is getting on you for this?
Oh, there are people.
Well, that's part of the thing that bothered me so much about them randomly showing it in Discovery. Like, they're very leaned heavily into it's a new technology. But now all of a sudden they're saying it existed like 80-some years
Well,
earlier.
yeah,
the
that's-
rec room of the animated series.
Well,
I mean,
they did tease a holodeck on the original series, but it just wasn't a fully fledged idea or functioning capability like we see later.
We didn't see a lot of time off on the original series. We
No.
didn't see people.
Well, they would
were
sit in the
always
lobby and like they played the
3D
lyre and
chess.
3D chess.
Or they went
and
to that
sing.
planet with Alice in Wonderland stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know about other people, but it was really hard for me to pick favorites. I don't know why.
I have a lot
got
of
some.
honorable mentions.
Because at least in every episode there was something in it that I was like, oh, there was that thing that was
There are
cool.
great
There
elements
was
of every
the thing that
episode,
we
yeah.
didn't. So
I was surprised in watching the season how much of it I enjoyed. Like, I was kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
we're going to rewatch season 1 and get through all of it. But there was, even the episodes I don't like that much, the ones lower on my list, there's still things about it that I really like.
Do we want to
I'm-
start
I'm-
with least favorites?
Yes, always end an episode on a good point.
Well, I will give one that was my least favorite. One of my least favorites was Coming of Age.
What?
We
Which
don't
one
like
was that?
Klingon episodes.
That's not a Klingon episode.
That's
That's
a
a
Wesley
Wesley
Crusher.
episode.
Oh, yeah.
So here's
Oh,
why.
yeah, the freaking test.
Oh, the test for Starfleet Academy.
It just made no sense to me that they were coming here and they were testing them and only one of them could make... It's not really canon, I don't think, for how they got into Starfleet. It seemed confusing.
I mean, the episode's canon, but other
It's-
times they talk about how you get into Starfleet.
It didn't feel like it
it's
matched
like,
up,
this
yeah.
doesn't... Why is it 1 in 4? Why can they all pass, but only one gets in?
It
This
just
is
seems
dumb.
like there would be nobody at Starfleet. And it was very
Exactly, and
confusing.
then, like, you
Well,
watch...
maybe they change it after Wolf 357 or whatever. I don't know the numbers.
5-7.
Anyone could get into Starfleet. We're out of people.
I don't know. That's the only reason I don't like it. It seemed like it doesn't track with the rest of it, and then everyone's like, oh, you'll get in next year. Well, will he with these odds? I don't know.
Especially
He has to
like-
find an
especially-
outpost that only
Especially
one-
like when you watch the 2009 Star Trek movie and it's like they accept pretty much anybody that hops on the ship.
Yes.
That's actually one of my favorite episodes of the season. I
That's
think.
one of your favorites?
Yes, I
Okay.
actually really like the Wesley Crusher in that episode. I feel like it doesn't make him out to be a huge, annoying little brat. I feel like he feels more. Oh wow, you're laughing, Kylie. You like Wesley Crusher.
I do like. I don't have it ranked either way. For me, it's an okay episode.
I also like the other three characters. I feel like for one-off characters, I feel like they have a lot of depth to them for just being there only in that one episode. It's one of the ones I remember watching multiple times from the originally, not like when it first aired, but like after the fact in reruns. It's one of the episodes I can remember watching multiple times and always really liking. So it's one of my favorites of the season. I think it really works well with the test, and I'm not thinking too heavily about the test and thinking about the logistics of it. Maybe it doesn't make a lot of sense in the grand scheme of things, but I like the concept of this test. They're trying hard. He helps out the alien species guy, who I can't remember his name offhand.
Mordock.
Thank you. I like that character, too. He helps Mordock, and I don't know, I like that dynamic and the idea of him. He gets docked points because he helps somebody else, but it's actually a sign of good character because he cares more about everyone on the crew rather than his own advancement. And it's just, I don't know, it feels to me like that is an important step in the arc of Wesley Crusher.
I don't disagree that it services the character of Wesley well. It overall in the greater Star Trek universe, I think it's a check in the minus column, but also within the episode, everything they showed of Wesley, his psychological test, him with the alien in the hallway, he passed the test overall, and he even helped the other guy. It made me feel like, oh, Starfleet just did pick that guy because he's the first of the species. Like that, because we saw Wesley pass everything really well.
Right.
Mordock even says, I would have failed that. And Wesley's doing the job.
Oh, right. I mean,
he pilots the ship.
I also don't find Wesley to be an annoying, whiny baby in any sense. I don't know why.
So.
So I didn't need that.
I think it just kind of became like a popular opinion. Like when you go back and watch it, he's not as bad as
it feels
everyone
like
makes
He
him out to
only
be.
saves the ship like twice. Settle down, people.
Yeah, it feels like a fanboy.
It's more than
nitpick.
It's not more than twice.
Yeah, I mean, I could think of twice in season 1. It's got to happen more than that.
It doesn't, because the backlash was so vehement in season 1 that they dialed his character down quite a bit, and that's actually one of the things Will Wheaton talks about to this day, is like he appreciated his time on Star Trek, but the anti-sentiment from the fans, coupled with the changeover from Roddenberry to Rick Berman, really left the Wesley Crusher character out in the dust.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I still think it's still one of my favorites of the season. I feel like I have really weird favorites of the season.
That surprises none of us.
Oh, jeez.
Right?
Anyway.
Your list is going to be different than
we
the
were
rest of
talking
ours.
about worst. Sarah, what are some others?
That's the only one I really put as my worst. That's not saying there aren't others that I don't like, but I couldn't think of them.
For me, it's Code of Honor.
Code of Honor is the worst one.
And
I
Will Wheaton ranked all of Star Trek, and he ranked this as quite possibly the worst piece of Star Trek ever made, and overtly racist.
Yeah,
Frank's quoted it as that, somebody brought it up, he's like, which one? Oh, that racist piece of...
Yeah. So
Yeah.
none of the
It was
cast liked
horribly,
it.
horribly misguided.
Yeah.
So
To pattern this alien race after an African tribe.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't necessarily the script, but the casting. Because the script didn't... Because it's a DC Fontana script.
Right.
Because I was like, who wrote this?
Who just passed away,
Yeah.
by the way. Rest in peace. We love you. Hearts out into space.
So I think... I'm not sure who directed it or where in the casting. That's where the issue is. Also, why did they have to name the other female character Yarina? Yar and Yarina? Come on.
that was...
The whole thing was racist, vaguely sexist. It was almost had an implication of slavery going on.
Oh, big time.
It was just very, very weird and oddly not a Star Trek. It didn't feel like a Star Trek episode.
No.
It was very uncomfortable.
I skipped over that one in the rewatch
That's not
leading up
good.
to this recording. I was just like, no, don't need it.
It's probably the worst episode of the series, to be quite honest with you.
I don't like it. I just didn't think to put it down. It's really hard for me to put things down while I'm watching. I'm trying to be in it, and then I go back later and I forget. Sorry.
In 2016, it was voted as the second worst episode of Star Trek series ever, behind the finale of Enterprise.
Ouch.
Oh. I need to rewatch Enterprise, but I like the finale.
Well,
Because you're a Next Gen fan, it's not a finale for
Well,
Enterprise,
yeah.
it's a finale for Riker and Troy.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed it.
That's what people say.
Anyway, that's for our Enterprise episodes, which Kyle will be moderating sometime in the future. Next.
I didn't
Wait,
care
you're
for
moderating?
Enterprise.
Enterprise
You're
is-
moderating Discovery.
Discovery. I keep forgetting that. I need to remember that.
Deep
Archer
Space
is
Nine,
mine.
Voyager, Enterprise.
Yeah. I'll just support you in anything you say. You will get no arguments. I'm a Janeway girl, though. So.
Understandable.
And so our worst episodes of Next
Keep
Gen
going,
season
Nick.
1.
For,
Justice.
Yeah. Oh,
Justice.
I didn't care for Justice.
What's
yeah,
I have to
that's
look it up.
It's the
cringy.
half-naked
Oh
people.
man, that episode is so
You have a
cringy.
problem with half-naked people?
No, that's
That-
not why I didn't like
The
it.
jogging
It's what I
girl with the flowers.
Yeah.
Why is it jogging?
Oh, the
Why?
stepping on the flower, oh my god. I hate
That is a
episode.
very frustrating episode.
I don't have it as one of my worst, but I don't like it very much.
Why
It's
the
also one of the
jogging? It's so
many
weird.
in season 1 where I think they were still using original series concepts when they visited planets. Like they were definitely
Monocultures.
visiting a pre-warp civilization, which I thought we established in Next Gen.
Yeah, those people didn't even have
Which is
bras and
same thing,
underpants.
Code
They
of
didn't have-
Honor.
It's like their costume budget for that episode was like zero.
I
And
didn't-
they had one roll of fabric that they
doesn't-
had to clothe.
I
like
didn't
20
rate this as one
actors
of my
with.
worst because I think conceptually they were on a track.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just was executed not as well.
I
this-
actually, yeah.
When I look at my least favorites, I'm surprised because I still enjoyed them.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it would be like hard to pick least favorites in the season because I didn't like so many, but it's hard to pick them because
There are
there's
parts of it
still
you
lots,
still like.
yeah.
It's a cringeworthy episode,
And it
like
doesn't
the
do
first...
yard justice. Like, just read the one
yeah.
rule that
Well,
they have.
And
where
here's
it's-
and here's
That's
the
your
weird thing that
research.
doesn't make sense to me. When they're gonna kill Wesley for this little infraction, Picard says he can't interfere because of the Prime Directive, but it didn't stop them from going down into the planet in the first place.
And that's what I was saying,
Bringing
it
up,
makes
internal
bringing
logic,
up the woman
yeah.
onto the Enterprise and witnessing what her god looks like.
And then he flouted the Prime Directive anyway.
yeah. So it's just not. It's
that's-
tough.
That
Yeah.
one's
I-
not one of my favorites either.
I don't have it ranked, but I can see why you might.
It gets a bump for me only from the fact that it tries. It tries to do something.
Conceptually, it had a
however
thing.
slightly.
I mean,
tried.
it was talking about absoluteness, which
You're
I
right.
think is a very important concept,
Exactly,
especially
yes.
relevant nowadays. But at the same time, yeah, it's hard to marry absoluteness to the jogging, scantily clad aliens that don't do much, and plus they're trying to execute a child.
Right.
That's also problematic. I mean, he's still like, what, 13, 14 at that point? 15 maybe?
Yeah, he's pretty young.
And of course there's that point where the woman, I can't remember her character's name, but she's like, "Oh, you're a young one. We don't do anything that you're uncomfortable with." And she's like, "Oh, ooh." I mean, like, okay, great, you're talking about consent, and that's wonderful, but at the same time, it's just like, there's so much cringiness in that episode.
It's also Wesley's wearing a sweater, which is his thing, but they're all almost naked. He's got to be sweating a lot.
There's a lot of logic being applied when it's not necessarily logical.
I expect logic in my Star Trek.
Live long and prosper. Any other worst ones?
The two that I wrote, I have 3 that have no stars out of 4, because I started with this one, a 4-star system of ranking every episode. I didn't do that with the original series, and I might go back and do that. But the other 2 that I had down as no stars were Too Short a Season and The Arsenal of Freedom.
I had Too Short a Season down as well. I think that one is painful to
Right,
watch.
it is.
That's the
old guy's getting young.
with drugs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he goes from really bad makeup old guy
Right.
Basically,
To
they
a young
threw
guy.
clay at his face.
because he believes that only he can arbiter this conflict when really he's the one who corrupted the society to begin with.
Yes.
Right.
This also feels like it's more in the vein of original series kind of thing,
And that's
too.
something we have not talked about for this season at all, actually.
Well, it's
I
too
feel
short.
like we need to. That I feel like we need to. Oh, wow. Wow.
Delayed reaction.
Oh, wow. Okay. Anyway,
I just want to say that I'm agreeing with you on too short a season.
I would like.
did not
What I'm
like
trying
it.
to say is, I kind of feel like I would like to revisit that idea that you just brought up about the first season feeling a lot like the original series, and how is that a disservice, or is that something that was just there because of Roddenberry, or I don't know.
I think it was Roddenberry.
Yeah.
I think they were trying to repurpose some stuff to kind of get Star Trek and this new cast off the ground. Obviously, the Naked Now is the Naked Time is the Naked
it's
Now.
literally a sequel to the exact same episode.
There's quite a lot of episodes in the first season that even if they weren't originally some kind of original series episode in a loose framework, you could see how they could have been.
Right.
Like maybe this was something that they took from a story they wanted to do, had the show not been canceled, so they applied it here.
I mean, I feel like even the set design of certain episodes just feels so much like, wow, that looks like Kirk and Spock are going to show up on this planet any moment because it's got
Which would have been
it's
cool.
got a yellow sky. Or
Well,
something.
they also did a lot of soundstage work in
Right.
this season. A lot of, cyclorama backdrops and things like that.
Yeah, right.
They got a bigger budget as the show grew in popularity. Any other
But do
words?
you not agree with the Arsenal of Freedom being a bad episode?
I do not agree.
Okay.
Remind me of the Arsenal of Freedom.
Vincent Chiavelli is selling them some weapons.
Oh, that's the one where they...
Crusher falls in the hole. You already referenced it.
Oh, yeah, Crusher falls in the hole. Oh, yeah! That's right! And all the probes were coming. Yeah, that's a good episode.
It's a good episode of television with the stakes are high and it's building, but we learn a lot about the characters. There's some great character moments that I go into any more.
I guess I just find it boring.
Ooh, did you know that in that episode they did?
Which
they
episode?
did this.
Arsenal Freedom?
Yeah, they did a saucer separation, and it was completely using stock footage from Encounter at Farpoint.
Oh, of course.
This is the
Which
last
happens.
time we see the saucer separate.
Geordie LaForge had the con, and he's the one who had to pilot the battle bridge.
Plus,
Yeah,
I mean,
I-
Vincent Chiavelli, he's just a great character.
so
Right.
Yes.
Oh, R.I.P.
Watch his
Yeah.
episode of X-Files, it's great.
Yeah, also true.
Yes, very good.
Another reference to Ghost right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can't agree with that assessment. I
enjoy
didn't
the
rank
episode.
it as
it's not,
like
it's not
one of
the
the
best, but,
but yeah,
it's still decent Star Trek.
correct. Agreed. Sorry, Michael.
That was fine. Maybe I need to rewatch that one, and I will reassess
Did you skip it in this rewatching?
I did.
Okay.
Any other
I
myths?
started watching it, and it was the first 10 minutes. It's like, boring. Skip.
I have any others?
I mean, we touched on Naked Now. We touched on Last Outpost, which I kind of defended, but it's still towards the bottom of the season.
Yeah,
I think
I
it's
mean-
worth watching in the realm of Star Trek. There are episodes you could probably skip if you're new to Star Trek.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe you should watch that one. You're
I feel
learning
like-
a little bit. There's the first time you see the Ferengi, which come up a lot.
I feel like other bad ones are maybe Lonely Among Us, which is, I just feel like it doesn't really do much with the premise of the, it almost feels like two separate episodes. Like at the beginning, it's that whole idea of what's wrong with the ship. There's this entity that's taking over the computer, and we don't know what it is. And then suddenly it takes over Picard, and now it's like a completely different episode because we're talking about is Picard now who he says he is, and he wants to meld with this cloud
That's
thing.
another
and
DC Fontana episode.
yeah, and it's just like, ooh, that's so weird. And Symbiosis that I watched today, leading up
I have
to
that
this
as an
one.
honorable
I
mention.
like that one.
Really?
That one is so socially relevant.
It is
and
socially
timeless.
relevant, but it's just like, I love how the third or fourth act of the episode is basically just a PSA for drug use.
Which
Well,
at the time
I
it was
was gonna say
1987.
1987.
I know,
Every
but
season of
still.
every show
Just
ever.
say no,
But it's
Nancy
cringe.
Reagan.
It's so cringy
But what I
to me.
really like about it is that, like, they don't necessarily. It's
Okay.
it's about the
It's-
enslavement of these people,
Right.
Yeah.
But their argument is, well, that's our only way of making money.
Right.
Like, we don't have any way to support ourselves other than growing this drug to sell to this planet. So it is trying to say how that, like, they've both grown up with this addiction. Theirs is to growing the thing, and theirs is to take it. I think
It's a good episode. It's kind of crazy. It came out of the 80s because, like, we kind of walk away with the capitalists are the bad guys in the Reagan era, and the people who are addicted to the drugs are the victims. They're not the
I
bad
think
guys.
it's a scathing social commentary on first world versus third world. Honestly. And
And I
how
think
the
it's
first
clever.
world exploits it. And yeah, completely clever.
That they think they need it for this.
And we think it too at first. We don't know, and then Crusher finally makes that discovery. There's nothing wrong with them. They're in withdrawal, and it's.
I'll say one of the missteps of that episode is those aliens have some pretty sweet powers that come up once. It's wait, you can shoot electricity out of your hands?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
That does raise questions.
It is pretty cool. The episode's pretty cool because it doesn't feature a number of actors that have been in the Star Trek.
Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, Wrath of Khan. Both David, the actor who played David, and the actor that played Khan's right-hand man, both appear in the episode.
Joaquin, yeah. Mm-hmm. He's not credited in Wrath
of Khan. Honestly, I think I originally rated this episode as 2 stars. Then I was thinking about it here, and I erased one of the stars, probably because I was thinking about that whole thing that with Tasha and Wesley, and just feel oh my god, they're doing a PSA on drugs.
And it's a really short moment, though.
And I think I erased the star as that was happening. But
now
that you're talking about it again, I'm maybe I should give it that star back.
Well, that moment is a little cringeworthy, but when you think of it
it needed a more star above it.
I like the way the episode ends.
Wesley is trying to be the voice of the people watching that might be confused, because back then it wasn't maybe as depicted, and it wasn't. Addiction wasn't seen as a disease. It was seen as weak people who don't know any better.
They're the ones society should be shunning.
Yeah.
And it's also helping us anchor us to the world we're in, where nobody on Earth is addicted to drugs in this time, too. So Wesley wouldn't know. Yeah. So that helps reinforce that.
I agree with all of this.
Okay, I'm adding another star.
It's also the last episode.
I think I'm still thinking about it.
Yay!
I'm adding another star. I just wrote it
him.
down. I wrote the star and gave it a good rating.
It's the last episode Denise Crosby filmed.
Well, there you go. That's right. That moment is... I forgot about that, actually. That is the last one she filmed.
So I had The Too Short a Season as number 3 and Code of Honor as number 1 of my least favorite. So Code of Honor being the worst, Too Short of a Season being the third worst. The second one I have is Angel 1.
Angel 1 is, yeah.
Thank you!
I feel
validated!
I skipped that one.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure I wanted to watch it.
Angel 1 is as sexist as the other episode is overtly racist.
Correct!
Even though I think they really thought they were doing something progressive.
Agreed! And it came off all wrong. All wrong.
Well, it says in the trivia, and who knows if this trivia is right, but that it was supposed to originally be an allegory to apartheid.
Reversal.
Didn't land.
They didn't make it.
No. And the whole side plot with the people who had crash landed and who had intermarried among the people. I mean, it was just so clunkily done. And I was having a really hard time also choosing least favorites.
Right.
I don't revile this season as much as some might.
I don't either.
But when I hit that episode, I was like, oh my god, that is definitely one of them.
And Patrick Stewart said he had a hard time filming this one because he was trying to change it to make it less sexist and they weren't listening to him.
Yeah. Again, just another example of the struggle of some of these probably generally older white guys writing episodes about women. I mean, I think it's something they tried, but it didn't land. They get better, obviously. I mean, we eventually get a Captain Janeway, so obviously lessons are learned. But here, it just was very, very...
I mean, we get a Ro. She's an awesome character, too, in this show.
That's true. There are cool characters that come out, but they don't come out till later. Mm-hmm. So think of the evolution from Angel 1 to then.
Yeah.
Did
everyone say a couple of least favorite?
I mean, most of mine are the ones that we were saying. Obviously, I forget their titles. The racist one,
Code of Honor.
Angel 1, and then the Naked Now, just because it's just
it's just watch the original
series. Yeah, just watch the better one,
the bad one. Yeah.
I mean, it's fun to watch the drunk
and really, those are the only
people.
3 I dislike. There's stuff I like. Or, they're middling, but still, I like the characters. So.
It is so weird that they were like, no, that'll be the second episode. Nobody knows these characters yet, so why not show them completely not doing any, we don't know what they'd be doing anyway.
We don't know what we should expect from them, so why are we subverting those expectations by having them act completely different?
It might have worked better later.
Yeah. Naked Now does give us that moment between Crusher and Picard where he just exhales a lot really awkwardly. Rewatch it.
Because he totally has the hots for her.
Right.
It's so enjoyable. But I actually find the Yar and Data hookup very awkward.
Yeah.
I mean, it works for the great throwaway line in First Contact when
Yes.
the Borg Queen asks him when his last sexual activity was, and he goes to the exact date of that episode.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, but otherwise it just made me sad. Although it is used later in his trial of sentience,
Yeah.
because he was intimate with her. So
Yes. Measure of a Man.
It does
Measure
sort
of a
of
Man.
lead to the ending of the Skin of Evil episode, where they're all watching Yar give her own eulogy in some weird way, and
that's what it is.
yeah, and it's
That's what
just
you
like,
do in the future.
well, there
Yeah,
you go.
you make
Yeah.
holograms of yourself.
To people you've known for less than a year.
And apparently had a lot of insight into.
Right.
Good job, Tasha Yar.
Are we ready for our top eps?
Yes, I have many honorable mentions, so I'm going to go last. Because
All right.
I have 3 definitive favorites and a bunch of honorable mentions.
I wonder if it's all the same.
How many do you want for us? Like
Whatever you want to tell us.
Well, okay,
So
I'm curious to know how many people are going to beat me down for this, but I think my favorite episode is Haven.
That's your favorite episode?
Yeah, I think it's my favorite episode of the season.
Is that the one with no bras and underwear?
That's the one with Lawaxana Troy and the marriage
I don't
to
hate
Wyatt
it.
Miller.
It's not my favorite.
It's got its moments.
I think it's
don't-
my
That's
favorite.
not that one. is
I
it?
will watch
That's
every.
Haven.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
arranged marriage in Lawaxana Troy.
Oh,
Yeah.
what one was I thinking of?
You were thinking of Justice.
The one
Oh
we were
yeah,
talking
okay,
about.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. Haven's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love Data Lore. It is definitely one of my favorites of the season. It's probably number 2. And I love Hyde and Q. That's one of my favorites because anytime Q is on, I just absolutely love it. I didn't think I would like Hyde and Q again when I rewatched it, but I did. I was like, oh yeah, this is a cool Q episode. And Coming of Age, I've already said is one of my favorites, but honestly, when I think about it, Haven is my favorite. It's the one I literally watched once again before the lead up of this recording, and like just loved every moment of it. I think the introduction of Lawaxana Troy in the beginning of the episode is one of the greatest, funniest, most succinctly on point intros for a character in Star Trek. You get her from the moment she's on screen, from her first lines, and it's just like, Majel Barrett, or Majel, or however you say your name, you are just born to play this character, and it's a wonder that you got to play it at all, and so many times. I love her. I love Troy. I think if Haven had been written now and it were on like a new Star Trek, I think the Wyatt character could easily have been a part of the show overall as sort of like a interesting foil for the Riker-Troy relationship, because he's kind of a passionate character, and that's rather rare in a male character in the 1980s. He's got passion, he's got compassion. I don't know, I love the episode. It's weird, I know, but it's my
Speaking about
favorite.
passion, that was quite a speech.
It's my, like I said, it's my favorite of the season.
Okay.
I do love Troy, but that episode is unforgivable for the moment of Troy referring to Riker as Bill. I can't.
Never again.
She does it twice. She refers to him as Bill in the encounter at Farpoint.
She does.
It just sounds so weird.
Sorry.
I know it's weird, and I did notice how weird it was in that episode, but I went on was putting more into it than probably was necessary. I was like, oh, that's just a thing. She's the only one that can call him Bill.
Because they're Imzadi.
Exactly.
I don't mind that episode. I like Wyatt's parents in that episode too, and I like Lurch from the Addams Family.
Yeah,
Yes.
Lurch.
Mr. Hum.
Mr. Hum comes back.
Or something.
I love
can't remember
Mr.
his
Hum.
So
I enjoy that episode. It's not ranked for me, but I enjoy it. I like the
I don't mind
exploration into Beta Z culture.
That's the episode that introduces the naked wedding.
Correct.
that's the episode that undoes Marina Sirtis's character choice of the accent being Betazoid.
Yeah.
And then looks on, or
Says, "What is
Rachel
that
doesn't
accent?"
want to do it, so she says it reminds
And
her of her father.
agree.
And also her chemistry with Patrick Stewart is delectable.
It's so amazing. Oh, and then that line that she has, I love it. It's her thing where she says, "I'm Lawaxana Troy, the holder of the rings of Reese," and I wish I knew it by heart because it's such a great line. Because she says to the mother, "And who are you?" It's just so funny. I love it.
It's a good turn, yeah.
Okay, Michael has spoken.
I'll go.
Okay.
My absolute favorite, which I already delved into, was Data Lore. I absolutely love Lore and Data and seeing their relationship as it goes through all their arcs. I would rank him as one of my all-time favorite Star Trek villains, probably just under Khan. Mm-hmm. And then I actually really love The Big Goodbye, which is the first introduction of the Dixon Hill hologram, which also makes an awesome comeback in First Contact. And then Hide and Q, that was the episode where I didn't care for Riker very much. He was just there. I didn't have feelings for him all that much, but that was the episode where I actually really realized I love Riker as a character. And just like, and Q too.
Right.
We got him in Encounter at Farpoint, but this is where we see the more mischievous, naughty Q that we learn to love later.
I feel like that run of episodes in the middle, like the battle.
Yeah, and those episodes are all almost like right back to back.
Like all of those episodes are just so good. Granted, it's bookended by Justice and Angel 1, but
I do enjoy all those episodes, Kat. Season 1 Riker, Frakes talks about how him and Roddenberry, when they would talk about the character, it started out always being serious, not joking around, and then slowly throughout season 1, maybe you do make a joke, and then that's when we start to actually get the Riker character, and I think Hide and Q does show him pretty well. But I love The Big Goodbye. When I was a kid, the holodeck episodes are always my favorite.
Yeah.
So just how in love with Dr. Crusher were you in that episode in her little 40s get-up?
I enjoyed the episode.
With her victory wave and her red lips.
I was mildly
I
annoyed.
thought of you when I watched it.
I love her. Look, if my husband's gonna have like a celebrity crush, I'm glad it's somebody that's like intelligent and has substance and isn't just like for their body. Although she has a rockin' body too, but
and she's a Muppeteer.
And she's aged well.
And
she looks almost the same now.
Oh yeah,
she's a Muppeteer and a choreographer.
She may have aged better than Patrick Stewart.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing. Like at her panel, she came up and nobody knew it was her because she looks so much younger. Everyone expecting her to look much older, and she literally looks younger almost than the finale almost.
Wait, she's a Muppeteer?
She was.
Oh, yeah.
On the Muppet Show.
And
wait, really?
It's why she choreographed the ballroom dance for Labyrinth, because she was already working on that
She's
show.
in The Muppets Take Manhattan. She plays the secretary to the
that
Broadway guy.
Yeah.
Because she was already there doing... And they
do this.
I think that the person they cast backed out and they're like, you do it, because she was already there.
I don't think I knew that about her.
Well,
I've always liked
now
her
you
actress.
If you ever watched the end credits of The Muppet Show, she appears as one of the ancillary Muppeteers.
And I think she choreographed the Dark Crystal.
And she definitely did the ballroom dancing in Labyrinth. For sure.
Well, there you go.
I
learned
recommend
something today.
all movies that we have just mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I was annoyed with Data and the historian for coming along. Like, just give Picard and Crusher their date on the holodeck.
Conflict.
My favorite episodes, Data Lore, I think is my favorite of the season. I really enjoy it. I enjoy that we see Laura a couple more times. We already talked about Brent Spiner's acting. We talked about Encounter at Firepoint a lot already, and that's one of my favorites. I really loved Arsenal of Freedom, and maybe it's because it's probably... We get quite a bit from Crusher and backstory for Crusher. I mean, things we don't even revisit until season 7, and not even a very good episode, but like how she became a doctor because of her grandmother, who wasn't a doctor but was stuck on that. Like, I would love to see a show about whatever colony because of Picard's reaction. Oh, she was there for that. Now she helped survive.
Right.
Crusher was able to figure out medicine from the plants around. I think just showed a good, I don't know, she's a good doctor. So I enjoyed Arsenal of Freedom, and I already mentioned I love Vincent Chiavelli, so that episode is kind of up there for me. I enjoyed Conspiracy. It's not awesome.
I like that episode.
But I don't know, there's tension in it. Mm-hmm. I remember after watching it the first couple times, like, I can't wait till, like, we find out more about it.
I wish they had actually done, a multi-episode arc of that concept.
Well, and I didn't even remember that episode because it got pulled from syndication because, like, when the parasite burst out of him, it was pretty gruesome, and so they stopped airing that episode. So
it's super gruesome.
I barely remembered it, and
It's up at Wrath of Khan, but not the ear. That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah, very big time.
Except for the explosion in the chair.
Yeah, that's I think the gruesome part that his skin like disappears and you just see meat. It's so it's
It is like it's
not
not
very
a
Star Trek.
and it's like it's.
I don't even know what you're talking about, so I don't want to know.
It's the episode with the parasitic aliens that kind of take over those admirals in Starfleet.
Yeah,
And they're trying to
The neck
infiltrate
dragon.
Starfleet, and
They have neck
I
nubbins.
must have looked away. I'm sure Nick told me don't look. Because I don't
for that
remember any
moment.
of that. I'm picturing that scene in Alien.
Yeah.
Is it a lot like
It's
that?
reminiscent.
I mean,
A
it's
little
actually,
bit, a
it
little
goes
bit, yeah.
further, because Alien is
Okay,
just
okay,
a bloody
good,
chest.
yep,
This
yep.
is like...
Yep, believe me.
Blown out guts.
Great.
Of a character we met in a previous episode.
Right.
So that's my top ones.
Okay.
Okay, nobody's really saying the ones on mine, and now I'm self-conscious, and I don't want
Oh,
to
don't
say
be.
them.
It could
But
be
like I
in
said,
mine.
like,
Please do.
I mean,
Honorable
Star Trek...
mentions.
I
You
don't
know.
know. I feel like Michael's going to yell at me.
Everybody just liked different Star
All right.
Trek.
I'm sorry if I yell at people.
Encounter at Farpoint.
We've mentioned.
I know.
Yeah.
Symbiosis is one of mine.
That's in my honorable mentions.
I really enjoy When the Bow Breaks.
That's in my honorable mentions.
Okay, I feel vindicated.
Jerry Harden.
Deep Throat and A Desperate Housewife. Don't forget.
That's
And
right.
Mark Twain.
That's right.
And his daughter is on The Office.
There you go.
So there. Great family. So I like When the Bow Breaks. Listeners, that's the one where the alien race can't have kids, so they try to kidnap the kids from Enterprise. And they're like, what's the big deal? Just have more kids. We can't, but you could give us your kids. And like I like that between Crusher and Picard, because she's like, you're not going to leave, right? And he's like, I'm not going to leave. What would it make you think I would leave these kids? And she's like, well, I don't know. It wasn't exactly like that. I paraphrased.
Sure.
But I like that one a lot. Okay, here's my last one. I'm ready for you to all jump down my throat. But I put Skin of Evil.
I put it on my honorable mentions.
I
think
enjoy
that's a good
Skin of
episode.
Evil.
I mean, most people are pretty happy about the outcome of that episode.
The
Even
Blob is terrible,
Armus.
but the story is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that it's a senseless death, because red shirts die senseless deaths all the time in
Right.
Star Trek.
It at least makes it feel like there's a danger to what they're doing.
Yeah, and that like we get to see that when it's a character we care about, how it affects them, and how it probably affects them this way every time, but we're just the
Not
viewer
seeing it.
actually is
Right.
invested this time.
Yeah.
And I liked it. And I actually think Troy was very good in this episode. Well, they are.
Yeah.
They all are. Frakes gets pulled into that sludge, and that's...
They all have good moments. That's
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I didn't mention for Arsenal of Freedom. Like Geordi being the captain and standing up for himself. That's an awesome moment. And a lot of the characters have that in that episode. But in Skin of Evil, Crusher has her moments. Troy, yes. Data has his moments. When Armus is playing with them, they are standing firm in their beliefs and their Starfleet training. It's a good episode.
I always just remember that one. Like, it stays in my brain. So I know it.
And when Armus does kill Yar, she's not being very threatening either, too. Like, I like the balance of, it isn't one of her moments, because there's a couple, and then when she's gone, Worf has this later, too, where, like, Picard has to, like, no, are you going to shoot the view screen? Like, those moments happen.
Right.
And they, fortunately, didn't choose that for the moment that Armus strikes her down.
So those are mine.
Honorable mentions are mostly have been mentioned, not all of them. I have The Last Outpost because it introduces the Ferengi in a real way, and even though nobody likes the Ferengi, they come back so often, and you get the reflection of the, that whatever that being is, that I forget what you call him.
The Guardian?
The Guardian, yeah. You get
Not
his
the caretaker.
Not the caretaker. You get his reflection on them, which is funny. He figures them out pretty quickly. I have Where No One Has Gone Before as one of the Wesley Crusher saving the ship episodes.
Right.
It introduces the Traveler, which is another bookended character that comes
Right.
back in season 7. I also just thought it was a really interesting concept, this character, and the fact that you start to see that, he tells Captain Picard, you need to nurture this kid. He's much more advanced than any of you are realizing. And as
don't
a
tell his
Wesley,
mother.
and don't tell his mother. And as
Yeah.
a Wesley Crusher
Seems
fan,
sensible.
I was a proponent of this plot.
No, I actually really like that one.
Ugh, Kosminski's so annoying.
What?
The specialist that doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, well, but that's
Well,
funny.
yeah.
You realize it's the Traveler pretty early on, even if nobody else does. I have 11001001.
I'm
I like
glad
that
you're
one.
mentioning it.
I like that one.
It introduces Minuet, who
Yes.
becomes actually a fully fledged thing later on, a callback in a later episode. The Binar aliens or whatever. You don't really care about that plot. It's the holodeck to its experience. You get a lot of Riker's interests in there. It's a
Riker's interests.
quote unquote.
The bone.
Yeah, you get really good interplay between the captain and the first officer, and I think it's a really well done episode. It's very Star Trek Next Gen.
I like that one.
I agree. I
Does
like
it
that
happen
one.
before the big goodbye? Like, is this why they have issues
that
with
is-
the
No,
No,
it's
Big
holodeck?
Goodbye's
after.
first, and then
Oh.
11001001 comes after.
I like the idea of the Binars doing whatever they did to the holodeck being the reason they have issues with it the rest of the show, but
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
Doesn't work. I have When the Bow Breaks as an honorable mention just because I think it was a fairly gutsy story, and I do like that Dr. Crusher has the reveal. I like that the kids go on the hunger strike. I mean, it's a good episode, good story. I have Heart of Glory because that is the biggest Worf-centered episode of the season, and you get a Captain Klingon, and you get the whole interplay, and you get them trying to do the thing where they find your honor, find your...
You learn a lot about Klingons. in
You
that
learn
one.
a lot about
Like
Klingons.
that the body is just an empty
Deep
vessel. I don't
history.
think we get that in the original series.
Nope, you don't.
And the howling after you look into their eyes. Yeah.
You don't even get a lot of those moments in the movies.
No, 'cause
Star
the
Trek
movies,
6
The
being
movies,
the
the movies are still very much one-note warriors.
Correct.
Well, yeah, Star Trek
Even when
hasn't
Christopher
happened
Lloyd
yet.
plays the Klingon, it's still very.
He's still great though.
Correct.
Oh my God, I love
And then I also have Symbiosis and Skin of Evil. Symbiosis because I think it's actually a really great written episode. Skin of Evil because Armus the Blob, he's not one of their best special effects. And he's very, boring in a sense.
Yeah.
Just because he's just ultimate evil playing on their emotions. But you do get a lot of good acting, and Tasha Yar's death is notable. They've never killed a main character before that anyway, so it was
I think there's only one more that they do kill.
Yeah.
I remember the first time watching it, asking Nick, but she's not really dead, right? And he's
You
like,
think she's gonna come back?
yeah, she's
Which
dead. I'm
technically
like,
she does,
but
but-
she's probably not dead. And he's like, no, she's dead.
She's dead. But my top 3 favorites are number 3, Hide and Q, number 2, Data Lore, number 1, Encounter at Farpoint. You've mentioned all of them. Hide and Q, I agree about all of the remarks. I love Q. He is one of my favorite characters of the whole series. His episodes will probably appear in my lists quite a bit.
Oh yeah, totally.
Just because I think he's so great with all of the cast. He fits
And
in
yet you
seamlessly.
hate Star Trek V, which has the first Q in it.
It's not the same, and it's a terrible movie. Shatner is not good at writing things. Okay.
I thought Trelane was the first key.
Yeah. That is argument.
That's
a
argument.
theory.
But they did officially make God, that evil God, is a
Oh.
Q. He's a renegade that was locked away.
Well,
They
he's
made
not
that
as
official?
delightful
Official.
as
Those
John
kudos.
Delancey.
It's
Let's
on-
just put it that way.
Michael Hasakuda made that official. It's on Memory Alpha. Everything on Memory
Ooh,
Alpha is
not
official.
Beta.
Well, okay then.
I like this Q. So
Yeah,
Hide
I
and
do
Q
too.
is number 3.
Yes.
Number 2 is Data Lore. I put Encounter at Farpoint just because I think it's such a brilliant pilot. But Data Lore is a very, very, very good episode. And, I just want to give a shout out to the whole concept of the crystalline entity. Just because it's...
Which even that comes back.
I know, it comes
They have
back.
the same
does.
effects, though. It's easy to make crystal creatures.
Right.
It's beautiful, it's intelligent, you don't know what its motivation is. Destruction is a very, very big consequence of its need to live, and Lore exploits that, and
Right.
I think that's more evil than the Skin of Evil. So, I just think it's brilliantly written, and of course, all of the remarks about Brent Spiner. I cannot praise that man enough. I don't think he gets enough acting jobs. I
Well,
think he's
thank God
been
he's coming
typecast.
back. I mean,
I
we don't
know.
know to what extent, but I mean,
He's gonna do something, yeah.
I think prediction for Picard is that he is playing Lore because in 2 different scenes, one seems like very much either a holodeck or a dream Picard is having, and one doesn't, based on what they're wearing. So it
I
could
don't
be
know what to
before.
expect because they did the comic book tie-in to the 2009 Star Trek. That's canon, and Data essentially came back. He's captain of the Enterprise by Nero's time. By the time Nero,
And the Kelvin timeline?
no, in the next gen, he's captain of the Enterprise during when Nero and Romulus gets blown up.
Oh.
And he tries to stop Nero. Him and Picard assembles a fleet, and he's captain of the Enterprise.
Interesting.
But he was destroyed at the end.
But
of
he
all his
downloaded all his
memories are in
memories into
B4.
B4, and B4 you learn that it was more than just his memories. It was his pretty much his core. So I'm wondering, because that's considered canon as of now, Picard might overwrite that.
One of the reasons I think that it might be lore is because Hugh is coming back, and the last time lore is Hugh and the Borg and all of that. So, and it seems very Borg heavy.
Yes.
But also, Brent Spiner was like, I'm never coming back, so I feel like it was for more than just a dream.
Well, they're going to have to explain away why he looks older.
I mean,
Data can age himself if he wants to.
Well, that's what I'm assuming they're going to have to throw in a line about that, don't you think?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For the people that don't know.
Were you done with your list?
That was my list.
I would like to say more about Hyde and Q, just because I don't think we did say a whole lot about it. We just said it was a great episode, but we didn't really get into any reason. Like,
I mean, we talked about Riker and...
Yeah.
I'm mostly focused on Q, but I do agree that we did talk about Riker because you see a lot of development for his character in that episode. You get to see his motivations. I mean, he really is trying to do good, but that...
Yeah, he's humble and he's trying to not abuse his power, but it's just the temptations any human person would if you really had that.
He wants to save that child, and he says, I could have done it. It would have been real easy. Just snap my fingers. But it's like, it's the line. Okay, you save... Where do you save everyone? I mean, yeah, it'd be great if you could save everyone. But
and just being surrounded by your friends and family, like, they need something or they want something. Like, you want to give them that.
And that's real. I like that scene.
And it's
that
powerful
episode.
that they tell him that they don't need his help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really love that scene. And it's interesting that is a lot of these episodes this season they don't have the A plot and B plot. That is one episode that has no B plot. It's a 4-act structure of one story. And I really like that final scene where he's giving the gifts to all of his friends, and they're all like, "This isn't right." It's just like it's
and
not.
Picard's just watching it, knowing
and knowing exactly that this is what's going to happen.
He already knows his crew that well. And
I love him.
And Geordi has that moment where there's a female Klingon for Worf. Is this sex for you? Geordi.
Geordi has to have his coming of age.
Right.
Does that happen in this show?
Eventually. Is there anything else you'd like to say about Season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation?
I would like to say something serious about Geordi. I think that it kind of does mean a lot that Star Trek took someone with a disability and said, you have a place in the future. And that meant a lot to people then, and it means a lot to people now. And that is another thing that Star Trek has done well and always done well and continues to do.
And I would really, because the first season has a reputation of being bad, and it doesn't compare to the highs of some of the other episodes, but it's really not that bad. I mean, and the high episodes are really good. Like, you should not miss out on them just because the season kind of has that negative reputation, and there are really good moments there. You have to watch them. And
there's a number of times when Geordi could have overcome his disability, but he chooses not to. In the very first episode, the doctor says, I could just do a surgery and you'd be able to get it. She's like, no, I like the visor.
Is that this episode?
That's an Encounter Farpoint, yeah.
Oh, because they have that moment again in Season 2 with Pulaski.
They revisit it a few times. I think that he does make the statement that the surgery would be very painful.
Yes.
And would not be worth to him what the visor brings him now.
I say the visor gives him, he knows it gives him abilities more. Like, he could be human, more human.
He's basically the Daredevil of Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Kyle appreciated that.
I think it just adds to kind of what we're all saying is like, your disability, it doesn't have to be a disability.
Correct.
Yeah. And it's all how you see yourself. And so it's kind of cool. And it was before its time. I mean,
eugenics is a term that comes up a lot in the 80s.
Yeah.
And preventing, and we'll get an episode that Geordi-centric called The Masterpiece Society that delves into that more. I think it's worth mentioning that he's there and he's a part of the crew and he's flying the ship.
He is flying the ship until he becomes an engineer permanently.
Yeah.
Which is funny how this season there's literally no chief engineer.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that.
Yes, there is.
There's 3.
There's like a couple. They have kind of like a high turnover.
Right, yeah.
They kind of come under...
one of our chief engineers is one of the lines in one episode.
Yeah, It's a little weird.
I mean, you have to think, though, really, logistically speaking, on a ship as big as the Enterprise D, you probably would have multiple people. I mean, because there's no way one person could...
Yeah.
It's a large section. With a gigantic warp core.
The crew is like 431 or something, or...
I can't remember the crew. There's over
there's
1,000 people on the ship.
yeah.
Oh, no, I'm thinking the first Enterprise was like 400. And the Enterprise D is twice the size.
Yeah.
Correct.
I do think they really tried to have more diversity this time. More women, more minorities. Obviously,
and the families on the Enterprise, which is a lot different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the cast is, 3 women and 2 people of color. Like, that's pretty diverse for the 80s. I mean, there's some shows now that don't have 3 women on it.
Still.
Yeah. Right.
So good job.
And I mean, just look at how, 33 years later, it's still going. Picard. I mean, this is the next season of the Next Generation.
Right.
It really is.
It's one of the most beloved chapters of the whole Star Trek legacy.
As we're recording
the Next Gen movies, which...
Except for First Contact.
IMDb data has showed that the most anticipated new show of 2020 is Picard. That's what people...
I'm anticipating it.
I mean, I feel like Picard is getting the reception they thought Discovery would get.
Yeah.
But you needed that anchor.
They've been avoiding the continuation of this
timeline.
Yeah, like
they've ever since Voyager ended, they've been looking back, and that's the one thing.
And we're making the new timeline.
Exactly.
And Voyager, they kind of intentionally, but they made it difficult for them to revisit Deep Space Nine and the Next Gen crew. They get them there in different ways, but Voyager's off on their own, and then Voyager ends, and we go to Enterprise, and we go to
Voyager ends.
Well,
that's good. For our Voyager episodes, which will be sometime in the future.
Get excited, guys. Get excited. I know I am. If you want us to move it up, tweet at us.
Nope, we're going in order. You can't do that. Sorry, listener.
Tweet at us.
We're going in order.
If you want to get to it sooner, pay us so we can record more episodes more quickly.
Okay, I accept that proposal. Other than that shill, is there anything else you'd like to say about Season 1 of Star Trek The Next Generation?
I do feel like it... Oh, sorry, I interrupted you, Nick. I apologize.
I was just going to say there's kind of a lot, but I think I'll just say that I'm very excited to talk about the upcoming seasons.
Yes.
Me too! In fact, I'm so excited. I can hardly wait, and I really don't want to end this talk, but we can't be here forever. Some of us have jobs. So what I'd like to do is thank Sarah, Nick, Michael, and Kyle for joining me once again to talk about Star Trek in general, but specifically Star Trek The Next Generation. And since we've talked about Star Trek The Next Generation Season 1, it's time to roll the credits. Couch Potatoes Unite! Was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kelsey Rezmer. Kelsey played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole kit and caboodle was engineered and produced by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. Give us stars, give us comments, give us reviews. Let us know how we're doing. Send us a message. We might just read it on the podcast. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what we should keep, what we should toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions on shows we might consider, contact us at our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, where we have a guest book, via email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, or via our social media, Facebook, Twitter at CPU Podcast, and Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite. Though, of course, we add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time. We always have several more new episodes coming down the pike. Just listen to our intros. And if you miss old episodes or want to know in general what we cover, just find us. We are everywhere and searchable wherever you look for things on the internet. You can search for us, or you can subscribe at our website, our channels, our social media accounts. Stay up on our new events and episodes. Until the next time, all the Trek series of the past, with the exceptions of Discovery and the animated series now, are available on just about every streamer you can think of, so we're not giving preference unless you choose to sponsor us with the aforementioned money that Nick suggested. In the meantime, our Star Trek 50 Plus panel will next reconvene to discuss the second season of The Next Generation and part 6 of this Looking Back series, and that will be relatively shortly. So until next time, until next episode, new episodes published every Wednesday. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned.
Bye-bye.